shivers down your spine. Shrieking skull will shock your soul and seal your doom tonight. Spooky, scary skeletons speak with such a screech. You'll shake and shudder in surprise when you hear these zombies shriek. We're so sorry, skeletons, you're so misunderstood. You only want to socialize. I don't think we should. A spooky, scary skeleton shouts startling, shrilly screams. They'll sneak from their sarcophagus and just won't leave you be. Spirit supernatural, and Charlotte's all the fuss. The bags of bones here so unsafe, it's semi-serious. Spooky, scary skeletons are silly all the same. Their smallest travel slowly by and drive you so insane. Sticks and stones would break your bones, they seldom let you snooze. Spooky, scary skeletons will wake you with a boo.
Salutations, ghouls and freaks. Welcome to this podcast of Storm, where insane slashers, undead blood drinkers, and all-around crooked beans convene to talk and debate all things pop culture. With me, as always, is my co-host, the Mage of Madness, aka the Authenticator, Dalton L. Mortimer.
Good evening, everyone. You realize, of course, he just got that down, and he's gonna have to change it again in like a week. Pity Brainstormer for he occasionally makes work for himself.
Yeah. And I am your host / Scarecrow impersonator, the Brainstormer of Pop Culture. How's everyone doing tonight? And I see we already have one in the chat. Hello, Dragon Turtle.
Hello, Dragon Turtle. How goes it?
Okay, so simply because we have somewhat of a time. Hello, Chrononaut as well. We are going to continue from an article that we had started last week. So if you want the first half of that, go check out 187. And we're going to try and finish it as quickly as we can because we are simply pressed for time.
Yeah, we're getting up there, guys. We only get 20 hours of free stream time a month. So when these go longer than 4 hours, it really kind of nerfs our view time. But on the plus side, it rolls over every month, so we should have new watch hours here shortly.
Right.
Anyway, moving on.
So this is Halloween Unmasked, a socialist feminist history. So I'm going to start a little bit before because I don't think we covered the last paragraph, and then we'll move on to the next part.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In summary, thus far, Halloween originated from the Celtic holiday of Samhain. The Celts were converted to Christianity, and Samhain, like other pagan holidays, was Christianized into All Saints' Day. The conversion of Christianity resulted in a diminished role for women in the public sphere and the deintegration of female legendary figures as witches. Hold on.
Go ahead. Sorry.
However, it was the trade of one patriarchal society for another, albeit one with codified hyper-misogyny through religious texts and religious thinkers who believed women were little more than sinful brood mirrors. Okay.
Yes, and they believed men were little more than sapient livestock. They were frickin' beasts of burden. Because I hate to break it to you, and I apologize to the Christians in the audience, but Christianity dehumanizes both genders because neither gender is permitted to live for themselves. They are both bound to their respective roles and are not permitted to be free from them. However, because we are an inherently gynocentric species, I will point out that in the Christian mythos, despite the fact that Eve was the one who took the fruit first, and Adam's only crime was the famous yes dear syndrome. Mary was redeemed by way of giving birth to God sans any male input, because in the Christian mythos, especially the medieval Christian mythos, male sexuality is corrupted to pure female virtue. Therefore, the greatest thing that a woman can be is a virgin. And that is why there's all those stories about, virgin princesses being saved from dragons by noble knights. Because when you're in the Christian mythos, or at least the morality that is spawned from the Christian mythos, a woman is pure by default until she is corrupted, quote unquote, by a male figure. In the case of the virtuous woman, she is corrupted by any sex whatsoever. And in the case of the witch in the medieval mind, the devil is a male figure, and one of the most debased things that witches were said to do with the devil is commit hanky-panky with him and give rise to she-demons. So there's that. Moving on.
Okay. Next section of this article. Modern Halloween. Okay. Today, most people do not spend Halloween praying for souls of people in purgatory or honoring saints. Modern Halloween was made possible by several social changes: the advent of capitalism, the secularization of society, and the invention of childhood. What?
Okay.
The first two I could somewhat understand, but the invention of childhood?
Okay, several layers of what the fuck are you on are happening here. Number one, capitalism was not, quote unquote, invented or discovered. Because here's the thing about capitalism that makes it superior to just about every other form of economics. And I'm speaking as someone who considers himself a social democrat and therefore doesn't particularly care for entirely unfettered capitalism. However, the one thing you can say that capitalism definitely has going for it that the other economic models do not have: capitalism is naturally goddamn occurring. Because when Adam Smith created the famous work, The Wealth of Nations, and coined the term capitalism, he wasn't proposing a model for how things should work. He was attempting to observe and describe phenomena as it actually existed. That's what makes capitalism different from something like socialism, Marxism, or just about every other variation on this particular topic. In the case of Marx's theories, or in the case of other socialistic theories, they are a proposition as to how society should function. When Adam Smith created The Wealth of Nations, he was not proposing jack shit. He was attempting to observe and describe the world as it actually was, and to give a rationale for how that mechanism functioned. And how we know this is because capitalism, quote unquote, existed before even the advent of currency. It was just referred to as the barter system. But the principle was the same, i.e., this for that, tit for tat, quid pro quo, etc. That mechanism of trade and or commerce doesn't require currency. Currency just makes it more efficient. And therefore, if you consider bartering to be a precursor and an extension of capitalism, which in a sane model I think it's reasonable to do, capitalism was not discovered or invented by anyone other than perhaps by Adam Smith, in the sense that he was trying to put his finger on what everyone intuitively knew to be true. And quite frankly, that is a better way of going about academics than otherwise, frankly. I think that gives quite a lot in capitalism's favor, the idea that you don't have to discover or propose capitalism. It exists whether you like it or not. The only question is whether you actually have the capacity to understand how and why it exists. I think Adam Smith was a little bit ahead of his time in terms of his economics or sociology proclivities. In fact, quite frankly, I think he was ahead of our current time, because right at this particular moment, evolutionary psychology is considered a goddamn heresy. And if you defer to anything in relation to evolutionary psychology or evolutionary biology, you are basically blackballed from the sociological or psychological professions. Everything must be socially constructed because we say so. And you can't ever defer to things as they exist in nature or as an aspect of nature, because that is also heresy because we say so, no matter how true it objectively is. Anyway, moving on. But oh wait, I forgot the fucking childhood thing. Just because people in the old days had to also work while they were children doesn't mean there was never a divide between children and adults. To the point that back in the old days, and this is kind of a funny thing, pink was a color specifically reserved for little boys. Because the idea was blood was the color of manhood, i.e., red, and boys got to wear pink garments because it was a softer, more immature version of the red garments they would be expected to wear upon their adulthood. Whereas blue is the color of tears and therefore was predisposed towards the feminine sex, according to the old medieval color scheme. But why I point this out is childhood has always existed. And I hate to break it to you, but even now, most children, i.e., more than a vast plurality of them, have to deal with hardships in their childhood. That doesn't prevent them from also having a childhood, and that doesn't mean that today's hardships are any easier than other hardships that people have had to go through throughout history. It's different hardships, but there has never been a childhood entirely sans hardship. And there has never been a place or time where there was not a difference between what we refer to as childhood, or what we could recognize as childhood, and what we recognize as adulthood. I don't know where you are getting this idea that childhood is some kind of abstract social construct. But then again, in your framework, everything is a blank slate, and therefore everything else must be an arbitrary social construct, and there can never be any evolutionary or naturalistic proclivities inherent to any of this. Even though certain aspects of childhood and certain aspects of adulthood are universal across cultures. Now, the argument you could make, and the argument I would make in response to this argument, is that adulthood and childhood don't have a moral component or a abstract component, and that they're just biological extensions of development. That is a reasonable argument, and that conversation I would be glad to have. But you're not making the lines between adulthood and childhood are objective but have no moral weight or abstract weight to them, and therefore traditionalism is fucked. That argument I would agree with. You're making the adulthood and childhood didn't exist until somebody conceived of them existing argument, and that's bullshit. Moving on.
Yeah. Okay. With the advent of capitalism, the world became more interconnected and globalized. This interconnectedness resulted in massive shifts in populations around the world. In the United States, this resulted in an influx of immigrants. As a result of the potato famine, 500,000 Irish immigrants came to the United States between 1845 and 1850. In fact, half of all immigrants to the United States were of Irish origin at the time. Between 1851 and 1860, 2 million Irish immigrants came to the United States to escape poverty and disease, or join relatives who had come in the 1840s. These Irish immigrants helped to popularize Halloween celebrations in the United States, such as sharing such traditions as wearing costumes while going door to door for food or money and fortune telling.
Okay, bitch, let me unravel this cacophony of lies you've just queued up here. The Industrial Revolution is not capitalism, i.e., capitalism well predates the Industrial Revolution. You are calling the advent of the Industrial Revolution the advent of capitalism, which is some bullshit. Again, if you define capitalism in its codified abstract form, it's existed since the barter era. If you want to push it a little bit further than that, you could say it's existed since the advent of currency. I would again push back and say it goes back further to the barter era, but if we want to be as nice to each other as we can possibly be, you could just about get away with saying capitalism necessitated the advent of currency and not direct barter. That's an argument some people make, and I can kind of see where they're coming from there. But you, my dear, are straight up conflating the beginning of the Industrial Revolution with the beginning of capitalism itself. It's funny how all of a sudden it's not convenient for you anymore to conflate the slave trade with capitalism, or are you conflating the slave trade with capitalism? In which case, you're conflating the age of exploration also with capitalism, which is some bullshit. And I must say, yeah, no, fuck off. Also, the Irish were not the only people with harvest festival traditions that would then become conglomerated into Halloween. Much as with many other pagan holidays that got Christianized and then eventually secularized, it was a group effort between the Celtic peoples, the Germanic peoples, the Slavic peoples, and whatever native people a given landmass had. As with the Mayans, Aztec, and Olmec traditions getting weaved alongside the Samhain traditions into what is now Dia de los Muertos. So yeah, no, thoroughly misleading and inarticulate and incomplete and wrong. I don't know if you know you're lying. In fact, I would hazard a guess that you don't know you're lying. You just don't have the entirety of the story. But please feel free to appraise yourself of the side of the story that I just gave you the other half of, because you're only telling occasionally half and usually less than that of the story, and it's pissing me off. Either speak on these things in an intelligent manner or don't speak on them at all, please. Because your incomplete, half-assed cacophonies are pissing me off. Moving on.
Rather than the earlier Catholic traditions of exchanging prayers for food, 19th century children would exchange songs, jokes, and poetry in exchange for money or fruit. This represented a turn away from religious traditions as the public sphere allowed for more secularism. Another tradition brought by the Irish was that of jack-o'-lanterns, which came from the custom of carving turnips for Halloween, and the story of Stingy Jack. Stingy Jack was believed to roam the earth with a lantern, as he was denied entrance to both heaven and hell, but the immigrants to the U.S. used the more plentiful pumpkin for carving rather than a turnip.
I don't have any problems with her description of the jack-o'-lantern. Her description of the jack-o'-lantern is fine, but again, you could have pointed out that considering the offerings of things like baked goods and sweets to spirits during Samhain, and the offering of things like soul cakes during All Saints' Day traditions and All Hallows' Day traditions, that the whole swapping prayers for fruit is not as much of a swap as it seems. But then again, that would require you to have a well-rounded understanding of the story, which we've established thoroughly that you don't. Next.
Finally, the Nightmare Freddy Krueger has arrived. Hello, Corrupt.
Hello.
Hello, Corrupt.
Hello.
We're finishing up the article from last week.
All right. Once again, sorry I had to leave. Something came up and I had to go.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't an emergency, but it was pretty important.
You
Nothing bad, though.
you missed her conflating the Industrial Revolution with the Age of Exploration with the advent of capitalism, and presupposing that the idea of childhood didn't exist before the modern era.
That's insane. But capitalism is essentially just barter. It's like at its basic core, if you reduce it down, it's just trade.
This
For
is what I
example,
said.
right? Say that again.
That's exactly what I said.
Exactly.
Basically.
For example, right? Say I like Dalton's hat, and I'm like, here, I'll trade you, I don't know, this cheese for your hat. I mean, that's if cheese is, and we use cheese as currency. There you go. Like, how many slices?
Okay,
of
I'm
cheese
not
am I gonna get
making
for your
that
hat?
hypothetical bargain, but sure. Anyway,
There you go.
moving on.
Mhm. Right. Okay.
So, what did you say, Dalton? You not what? I couldn't hear you.
I'm not taking that hypothetical bargain, but on we move.
Alright. Fair enough.
All right. It is quaint to consider that many of our Halloween traditions came to the United States as a result of Irish immigration. However, it is important to point out that the tragedy of the potato famine was not caused by an unfortunate fungus. Instead, the true blight was British colonialism.
Fuck you, dear. The Irish are on the Ireland is one of the British Isles, so making the distinction between British colonizers and the Irish is a little bit sketchy to begin with. And also, did you forget that many of the immigrants that came to America well before the Irish potato famine were Dutch and Germanic peoples who themselves had various harvest festival traditions that would then become conflated with Halloween? Because again, it was a team effort across all of Europe. It wasn't just one culture's traditions that got conglomerated into Halloween. You had the Irish, you had the British, you had the Germanic, you had the Slavic, and on and on and on we move. And then it gets even more complicated when you consider stuff we borrowed from the Native Americans, be they the North American varieties or the Central Mesoamerican and South American varieties as per Day of the Dead festivities, getting intermingled with Samhain traditions, what harvest festivals the Mayans, Aztecs, and Olmecs already had, and of course, other traditions that came along with them. But again, this you would know if you weren't so cockamamially addicted to the need to make everything an oppressor-oppressed narrative. Like, cultural cross-pollination of the multicultural variety, quote unquote, is not new. It wasn't as simple as big bad empire comes in and oppresses all the things. Like, every culture had this aspect of give and take. Yes, there was some warring going on. Yes, there was some oppressing going on, but there was also mutual respect being forged and cultural cross-pollination happening. And you would know all of this if you weren't so goddamn addicted to Hegelian dichotomies. Moving on.
I imagine, if I can butt in for a second, I imagine that's because, her worldview is her worldview is seen through the lens of her politics and her political ideology. So she can't see the world in any other way but that, you know?
It's so it bothers me because it's so simplistic
Yes.
and yet it passes itself off as intellectual. Like
Yeah.
it's baffling to me how much of a like grade school political cartoon worldview these people have. It's literally like something you'd see on freaking Captain Planet or something, and yet these people A have never grown out of this, and B the powers that be in academia are encouraging them to have this mentality. And I'm
Yeah,
just
they
sitting,
do.
and I'm just sitting here going, so your contention, you of the infinite number of degrees, is everyone before the year 2000 was backwards and primitive and barbaric, and they didn't have personal relationships or nuances to their cultures or anything. No, it was just these peaceful, noble savages that would then be dominated by the evil empire. It's literally like something out of. It's not even Grimm Brothers levels of fairy tale bullshit. It's Disney-fied versions of the Grimm Brothers fairy tale bullshit.
Pretty
But
much.
they actually believe that's how history functions. And I'm just sitting here like,
I mean,
so you're assuming that there were no three-dimensional human being before the year 1900. That's interesting.
like technically speaking, we would be seen as aberrations, right? Just basically for saying this type of shit by people like this, because we share like Brainstormer, you and I are all parts of the struggle or some shit. So we should basically adopt their worldview and their like hatred of the oppressors, you know?
Yeah, between us, we have all the minority cards. Huzzah!
Exactly. So we should hate the oppressors because it's such I've said this before, it's such an incredibly simplistic worldview that relies on basically tearing away like any sort of autonomy or responsibility or any sort of nuance about a situation and boiling it down to I'm bad, like you're bad because you're white, I'm good because my skin is darker than yours. Like that's literally it.
It's literally like a cheesy '80s Saturday morning cartoon levels of thinking is where we're at now. Like
Pretty
the
much
the evil people do evil because they just want to do evil, and the good people are good because they're the victims, and we don't need to think of this any further than this. And it's just like, guys, that's never like that. I don't want to say that's never. It's never that uncomplicated because sometimes there just is, a definable right and wrong to things, but
yeah.
very seldom do you get a cut and dry. These are the good people. These are the bad people narrative. And what fascinates me is they will de-emphasize any good aspects to cultures they don't like and overemphasize any good aspects of cultures they do want to play the victim for.
I guess because it largely because it complicates the narrative. Like if you think of it in terms of like a political candidate or campaign, right?
They just want
Like
everything to be black and white, and they never want to.
it has to be black and white to sell a particular narrative. If I want to sell the narrative that you're bad and I'm good, I have to strip away the nuance because it's the most effective way to sell that narrative to a particular audience. I say particular audience because this isn't for you or me or Brainstormer or anybody watching. This is for a specific audience. They're trying
Yeah,
to sell an idea to an audience.
Right.
And when you're selling an idea to a specific audience, you don't want nuance and you don't want complications to the argument that you're making.
no, but it honestly it just makes me feel bad for them because
Yeah.
so much.
I don't mean to cut you guys off. I just
Yeah, we should move along, but
Pumpkin
nevertheless,
spice.
it makes me so sad for them because they miss out on so many of the things that make history actually interesting are the
Yeah.
things we have in common with, the various cultures from far away and long ago. And this idea that like everyone before the year 1900 were cartoon cutout cartoon characters and everyone now is so much more evolved than them. It's
Enlightened
just
and shit, yeah.
sad. Anyway, moving on.
All right. Also, pumpkin spice. Also, I've never had pumpkin spice before, but like, I know white women gobble it up like it's like liquid gold.
The-
I actually might have known some people in high school that, yeah, that did that.
But
the,
like
the
pumpkin spice.
nectar and ambrosia of the basic bitch suburbanites.
That's also why I
Basically.
don't like Starbucks. Well, that and also I don't like coffee. So
Like, I don't like coffee either.
I tried it like when I was a kid, and I like it was pure black. It was just black. It was just black coffee. I tried that.
Like, I like coffee if I can put like sugar and cream in it, but then it's just chocolate milk at that point, right?
Mm-hmm. Anyway, yeah, let's
Actually, I prefer chocolate milk, just regular chocolate milk.
let's move on before we make each other thirsty.
I got water.
Well, fuck you. Now I'm alone in my thirstiness, and that makes me upset. But that's neither here nor there.
Phrasing.
Yes, fair enough. But moving on to the love of all the things.
All right. In 1801, the Act of the Union went into effect in Ireland. It was a free trade agreement which sought to integrate Ireland into the British economy by reducing tariffs, merging currencies, ending the Irish Parliament, and retooling the economy towards British needs. In the subsequent years, the Irish economy became centered on exports of barley, wheat, potatoes, linen, cotton, and livestock. As the economy shifted toward a cash crop export focus, poverty and unemployment increased across the country. At the same time, the land became increasingly overused. To enforce the subjugation of Ireland, there was one British soldier per 80 Irish persons, more than any other colony.
You really don't want to start playing victim for the Irish, my friend, because if you start playing victim for the Irish, we're gonna have to talk about some very uncomfortable truths with regards to this whole Black Lives Matter narrative. This whole idea that black people as a race are uniquely aggrieved. And I'm glad somebody is mentioning the ways the Irish were fucked over, but be careful with that thread you're pulling because you might not like where it leads you. Might lead to some very uncomfortably complicated conversations about how maybe black people were not uniquely oppressed.
Like, I mean, if you look at the Woman King is about the Dahomey, which were a military arm for like a slave empire that was
Yeah,
at the
they
heart
were
of the slave
the
of
slave
the
empire of what
Atlantic.
has now been in that
Yeah.
apparently even now a lot of the politicians are like, can we go back to slavery yet?
That movie did not interest me at all when I saw the previews for it.
Not really, no.
Yeah, I really wish I had seen Amsterdam this month.
What is Amsterdam? What?
It's got
It's a new independent-ish movie.
well,
It's not very good either, to be fair. It's also kind of blah.
Well, it has Christian Bale, John David Washington, Margot Robbie, and a lot. It's a star-studded cast, and it looked fun from the trailer I'd seen of it. So
Amsterdam? I gotta see this.
anyway, I don't have anything to say, to be honest.
Yeah, moving forward.
Okay.
Oh, it's a drama comedy. Oh.
The extreme poverty of rural Irish people resulting from the Act of the Union increased their dependence upon potatoes. Potatoes themselves were introduced to Europe by the colonizers of South America and appear to have been brought to Ireland around the 1580s. Thus, when the potato crop failed in 1844, one of several crop failures over the previous 50 years, it hit an already beleaguered population. The Irish themselves were blamed for this, as Thomas Malthus considered the famine a matter of survival of the fittest among an overpopulated people. Yet, even during the famine, more wheat and barley were exported to Britain than the 3 years prior to 1845, and livestock continued to be exported even as people starved. Okay, well then that just proves British is are fucking assholes. No offense.
Well, okay, it's not even the British in particular are assholes thing, because this happened to every culture that got colonized by any other culture, and to be fair to the British, they did their best to mitigate as much of this as they could.
I'm gonna be honest, like the colonizer shit. It's like this is such a dull way to look at the world. Like it's just such a dull way to look at history.
Yeah,
Like
everyone
the
just colonized everyone else,
I
and
mean,
then we're in the modern world, and then it matters
it's
more because reasons. It's stupid.
it's such a boring, hyper pretentious way of like interfacing with any sort of historical content. When like when you categorize people as either oppressors and oppressed, or colonizers and the colonized, it's like you basically just like diminish all of the interesting aspects of history. And you can't, because like we can't be interested in the colonizers because they're the bad guys, and so we always have to just look at them in terms of like black and white, and it's so it's so
And the colonized people never did anything wrong while they were being colonized, don't you know? They were
exactly
the victims.
so
It's
dull.
just, yeah, no, just again, we can talk about the ways the Irish were fucked over. We can have that conversation, but if we do that, several critical race theorists are going to lose their fucking wings, academically speaking, because if you truly want to talk about some of the ways the Irish were fucked over, we're gonna have to stop using the word cracker, because cracker comes from the old Irish Gaelic, Craic, crack, which
Yeah, crackers a fucking slur anyway.
yeah, it was a term in Irish Gaelic that basically meant um jokester, ne'er do well, or drunk. That's what cracker means, and it was a word used specifically against Irish indentured servants and slaves. Also, by the way, um, the Irish were being fucked over like this long before the British Empire, quote unquote, and long before the potato famine. Let's talk about the concept of transportation, children, wherein a bunch of Irish criminals were shoved into slave ships and shipped off to either be indentured servants or to be slaves. And yes, there were Irish slaves,
Yeah,
because
there were.
originally slavery was not a racial issue. The only reason it became a racial issue later on is because Africa saw the slave trade and went, "You mean we can get away? We can get rid of all these undesirable people, and you'll pay us to get rid of them?" Cha-ching.
Pretty much, it was yeah, like the slave trade. The slave trade didn't affect. The slave trade was so much larger, and it was so much more of a nuanced and like issue that you have to think about than just black people are slaves. Like a lot of people were enslaved because
Yeah,
slavery was profitable.
and to be fair, the Irish weren't just getting fucked over by the British Empire. The Irish were everyone's whipping boy there for a little bit. It, it was not like, the reason being is because Ireland is like 70% fucking farmland,
Yeah,
and much as with now with the attitude towards the flyover states, people don't really respect or have sympathy for peasant farmers very often. But again, if we were to look at that, we might have to look at ourselves in the mirror and wonder, how do we treat modern flyover states versus how did they treat the old Irish?
that
Almost
would
like the more things change, the more they stay the same. And despite
pretty
all
much.
your noble victim narratives, you're still acting like city-bound posh twats while the peasant farmers are being completely and utterly fucked over by everyone all the time, all at once.
Huh.
It's almost like, for all of our virtue signaling about oppressors and oppression, we're the oppressors in this situation. We can't have that. Erase, erase.
Pretty much, like it breaks our programming to know that we also contribute to some form of oppression. What
And
they'll
yet,
just
20 years from now, when the tables have turned, they're gonna start whining again.
pretty much, it's like you contribute to this shit with they're contributing to this shit, and it's ridiculous.
It's like people in the Satanic Panic who never acknowledge they did anything wrong, and then 20 years later they're so utterly flabbergasted that we've gotten to this point, and it's like, yeah, no. If you truly wanted a world in which no one was being fucked over, you might try not fucking people over. That tends to be the best way of going about that.
Pretty
Because
much,
if you try to prevent people from being fucked over by fucking other people over, all you're doing is being on the quote unquote wrong side of history. Anyway, next line there.
I was just gonna say, it's fascinating how I'm able to learn a lot more just by sitting here and listening to you guys talk than I ever did in school.
Yeah,
In terms of
American educational system, ladies and gentlemen, American educational system.
during the famine, impoverished farmers were evicted from their land, and former slave ships were repurposed for carrying Irish immigrants to the U.S. Thus, the famine actually revitalized the shipping industry.
This happened long before the potato famine as well. Don't act like this was only an advent of the potato famine, goddamn you. Transportation was a thing long before the potato famine. It was actually during its time considered to actually be something of a progressive move, because before, things like thievery, larceny, arson, etc., they were hanging offenses, i.e., it wasn't until the advent of transportation that your option was anything other than being in prison or in a mental hospital for your entire life, or the rope. When transportation was offered for the first time, it was actually considered a remarkable leap forward, i.e., now instead of hanging for that extra $5 you stole, you can be shipped over to America and be indentured for a given term. And if you can't earn enough to stave off your indenture, because sometimes indentures were set up in such a way that it was all but slavery, and no one actually paid off their indenture for a while, which is another thing we don't want to talk about. But yeah, transportation long predated the potato famine and stuff. And the only reason you're focusing on it this hard is because you want to sell the British Empire oppressed the Irish narrative. When you get down to it, though, you find that the first options for transportation weren't even British. They were the Irish establishment offering transportation to the Irish criminals. But that would imply that the Irish people somewhat oppress themselves, and that it's more of a class issue than it is an oppression issue. But we can't talk about things that are class issues instead of being oppression issues, derp. For some fucking reason. More things change, the more they stay the fucking same. Moving on.
Right. Okay. In this sense, the spread of Halloween was made possible by the colonial plunder of the Irish economy.
The Germanic and Slavic peoples that would spread throughout what is now Pennsylvania Dutch country and also into the Midwest also brought their harvest traditions too, which weren't all that dissimilar from the Celtic Irish ones, because of course there was variations on these same themes in just about every culture in Europe and several places that weren't in Europe. But again, that would imply there's some sort of evolutionary psychological necessity behind these traditions. And we can't have that. We're too busy telling a social constructivist story that's all about oppressors and oppressed. Fucking idiots. Moving on.
oppressors. I'm being oppressed. Help me, Dalton. Help me.
No,
Wow.
no.
Oh,
I'm
you know
not,
what?
I'm not going to help you until you can actually demonstrate to me that you're being oppressed. That
I'll
is the
oppress
correct
you then.
answer.
I'll oppress you then. There you go.
Well, that's how that works. Anyway, moving on.
And anyway, aside from the Irish contributions to the celebrations of Halloween, they gained popularity during the Victorian age with fortune telling, ghost stories, and parties. However, the biggest boon for Halloween was the commercialization of the holiday during the early 1900s. Magazines of the era told women how to host Halloween parties, and Rotary clubs began hosting Halloween celebrations. In 1927, the words trick or treating were first used in the U.S. to describe children exchanging treats of pranks in exchange for threats, exchanging threats of pranks in exchange for treats. Sorry,
Wait, you just skipped over like 3 entire centuries of traditions here, my friend. What the actual like was was I following that timeline right? Did she seriously just skip over like 300 fucking years?
well, 1844, 1845, so the exodus of Irish people.
Okay, but she didn't mention anything from like 1600 through 1900, did she? God God damn it. You skipped over the banning of Halloween and Christmas by Oliver Cromwell during the Jacobean era. And you skipped over the influence that Halloween had during the Elizabethan period. And you skipped over the advent of Halloween traditions in the colonial Americas that we still have record of thanks to people like Nathaniel Hawthorne. Like it's not like Halloween just disappeared from like 1500 through 1800, my friend. We have several documents, especially in the New World, of people, especially in farming communities, having Halloween parties. We even know that Halloween soirees existed from the East Coast all the way through what is now Louisiana. But you just completely and what baffles me is you could have made a killing off of the story of Oliver Cromwell banning both Halloween and Christmas. That would have been a nice feather in your traditionalism sucks hat. But you didn't even mention Oliver Cromwell. You're talking about the history of Halloween as it relates to oppression, and you didn't talk about the period after the Elizabethan period, but before the modern period, when Halloween and Christmas were both fucking banned for religious reasons. That I that genuinely pisses me off. Like I don't want to say this, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I could tell a better Halloween being oppressed story than you by the simple fact of knowing what the fuck I'm talking about more than you do, apparently. Jesus, tapped into Christ. God damn it. Moving on.
Right. The holiday became a family affair after World War II, and it was during the 1950s that trick or treating became common across the country. The 1950s also saw the explosion of the horror film industry, as well as the manufacture of decoration and greeting cards. Commercial
Wait, hold fucking everything. Did she skip over Devil's Night?
looks like it, yeah.
Fucking hell. It, Again, not to do your job better than you do, but if I were a anarcho-communism Antifa loving son of a bitch, I would have pointed out that in the time period between when it was banned by Oliver Cromwell and the time where it regained a modern resurgence in the 1950s, Halloween was a night of anarchistic debauchery and property damage and arson known as Devil's Night, and that was part of the reason that it was so heavily focused on in the 1950s, was because of the meddling of the bastard Oliver Cromwell, who banned Halloween for religious reasons. For a while there, it was considered a faux pas to celebrate Halloween, and therefore the primal energies of the, Halloween spirit, quote unquote, basically went on the fritz, and Halloween became Devil's Night, a time where youth would go on and basically commit acts of arson, vandalism, etc., to get out their more primal urges. And again, if I were an Antifa supporting motherfucker, I would have perhaps framed those guys as the good people and framed the attempts to over traditionalize Halloween in the 1950s as a bad thing. But never mind. I guess once again, I'm better at your job than you. But again, I guess knowing about Devil's Night and knowing about the banning of Halloween by Oliver Cromwell would have required you to do more than 5 seconds of research on Wikipedia on the subject. Never mind. Go on with your thing. It's fucking pissing me off. It's not even a matter of she's being stupid, which she is, but it's a matter of even within her own stupid goddamn framework, there are parts of the story she's missing that would actually help her case. But never mind.
Right. Well,
Moving on.
I mean, correct. Do you have anything to say? Or
Corrupt?
Huh?
I mean, do you have anything to say with anything Dawn has said? Or
Oh, I just got back from using the bathroom. That's why I said excuse me.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that.
Never mind. Yeah, moving forward.
Yeah. The holiday became a fairly, I read that, commercialization and family orientation of Halloween in the post-World War II era was the result of several social trends. First, the United States emerged from the war as a hegemonic power with little capitalistic competition in the realm of military, diplomacy, and economics. The Marshall Plan pumped $13 billion into Europe to rebuild it, but also refashioned the world as a consumer of U.S. goods. This allowed for an increase in living standards, wages, and employment, and also an increase in births and marriages. Of course, these benefits were not shared equally among society, as the United States was racially divided and actively persecuted anyone who did not share in the consensus of consumerism.
That is not how anything works, but incidentally, also in the realm of this is not how anything works, it also has nothing fucking to do with Halloween. What it has to do with is the roughly 40 years worth of Devil's Night that you skipped over, wherein, in the absence of official approval of Halloween traditions, the youthful, rebellious, repressed nature of people of the time became channeled into the time we now refer to as Halloween, which was at that time referred to as Devil's Night. And only after several decades of basically Halloween being an excuse for youthful rebellion, rowdiness, and vandalism of the anarchistic variety did traditionalistic fuddy-duddies finally get it through their heads that maybe this Halloween tradition isn't a bad thing, and maybe we should bring it back to give these children something to do with their time other than committing acts of vandalism and anarchy. Which, again, you could have easily spun into the violence being the voice of the unheard bullshit, or the anarchism in absence of structure being a good thing bullshit. And that would be a better version of this article than the one you're spinning. But instead of focusing on things that actually pertain to Halloween and actually could have perhaps helped your case, you are now going to waffle on for at least a paragraph about shit that had absolutely nothing to do with anything. God damn you. Moving on.
All
right. Thus, it is no wonder that Halloween emerged as a family-friendly consumer holiday during this time period. Furthermore, the period also saw the rise of youth culture. This was made possible by Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938, which outlawed child labor, as well as compulsory education laws from the earlier portion of the 1900s and the high school education movement.
None of this had anything to do with anything relating to Halloween, and also half of it is a lie anyway.
This just feels kind of like rambling.
Yeah, no, I think I wanted to say that earlier, but like it just totally skipped my mind.
Like I could go into all the ways in which that description of events is also wrong, but given that it has nothing whatsoever to do with Halloween and we're trying to stay Halloween focused, I'm not going to spend 20 minutes unpacking how, even if it had anything to do with the subject of the article, it too would also be wrong. But as it happens, apart
It
from the
just
fact
feels
that
like
it's just objectively false information,
it
it
just feels
also
like
has nothing to do with the subject matter. So, meh.
it just feels like she's rambling, really.
Yeah,
It's I want to talk about race and class issues, and Halloween doesn't give me enough chance to talk about race and class issues.
although the
Yeah,
next
pretty
the
much.
next part, and I think you can see it, Corrupt. The next part I'm kind of interested in covering.
Oh God.
We're not there yet. Don't worry.
Slut shaming and the rise of the sexy costume. Oh God, my soul is hurting right now.
Again, well, we're not there yet. We got like one more.
We'll get there. Move it along, please.
In other words, the spread of trick-or-treating represented a view that children should be enjoying candy rather than making it in factories, accompanied by living standards that did not require child labor.
No. The repopulation of trick-or-treating was to prevent kids from channeling their primal instincts into acts of vandalism and anarchy and property destruction. And again, if you were as down with your socialist bona fides as you claim to be, and I can't believe I'm having to be a socialist better than the socialist is, but actually no, I can believe that because they don't fucking half the time know what they're talking about. But if you actually were interested in telling a Halloween-centric socialist love story, quote unquote, you could have told the story about how in the presence of religious stigmatization by the likes of people like Oliver Cromwell, Devil's Night became a home for the cast-offs, ne'er-do-wells, and rowdy folks of society, and therefore Halloween became heavily associated with property destruction and anarchy. And given this, the powers that be chose to essentially accept Halloween rather than reject it, in the hopes that by accepting Halloween into mainstream culture, they could sanitize it and essentially shackle the spirit of anarchy that was contained within it to harmless pranks and or mischief rather than the arson and anarchy that it was spawning because of people like Oliver Cromwell stigmatizing it and preventing it from being respected in the cultural way it had been for several hundred years.
Fiery but mostly peaceful Halloween protests, you know.
Yes, for like 100 years, it was literally that. Yeah, but again, that would require you actually knowing about the history of the thing you're waffling on about incessantly, or more importantly, caring about the thing you're supposedly waffling on incessantly about.
Right.
Instead of using Halloween as a platform to talk about literally everything else except the subject matter in question. Moving on.
Mm.
It's just like the witch trials thing from earlier. The witch trials and the celebration of Samhain weren't all that related, but you related them anyway.
Right.
Anyway, moving forward.
Yeah. All right. Slut shaming and the rise of the sexy costume.
Ugh.
Hey, ye gods.
Honestly, I'll be okay. Just my personal thing with like sexy costumes. I don't like them, not because of the sexiness or anything. It's just they're kind of uninspired.
Yeah, because they're basically just like, I'm a sexy witch.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's no.
it's like I'm going to wear a slightly more stylized version of the dress I would normally be wearing anyway. Basically.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So I'm sorry. This is like just a quick tangent here, but yeah, they're uninspired. Like honestly, I've seen cosplay with more style and more just. It's just better, honestly.
Yeah. it's almost like when you're trying to be appealing, it seems forced, but when you just make something that's appealing, people find it more appealing.
Like, yeah, it just seems unimaginative.
Giant Turtle brings up an interesting point. Isn't most slut shaming from women to other women?
Yeah, a lot of
That is
slut
true. Yes,
a lot of
men do.
a lot of slut shaming happens from other women actually.
Yeah, the only thing men do generally is catcall, which, while it's uncouth, catcalling is a sign that men find women attractive.
I don't think I've ever done that. I'm just like, I look at them, they look hot.
Like
And I just move on,
I've honestly like I know catcalling is like a complaint you sometimes
A
see,
thing,
but
yeah.
I've never seen it before. I
No,
literally have only seen it on the internet. I've only heard about it on
Yeah,
the
I've never seen it either, but I'm aware that it's a thing that happens.
have you guys ever seen like those stereotypical scenes of like those workers?
Oh yeah, they're like, "Oh baby, take off
Yeah,
your
yeah,
dress."
the cliche construction worker sitting on the girder, and then a woman walks by and they drool or something. Yeah,
that is like the only time I've ever seen that, like just in film and television. I've never seen it ever in real life.
no.
I don't know if I technically was catcalled at one point.
I remember.
Oh, okay, well, it was weird because I was in a lunch line in school, right? And just, I don't know, some girls behind me like just ran their hand through my hair, and it was weird. I didn't say anything. I just moved on.
Yeah, I've had that happen to me too. I've had like weird interactions with women where they're like. Then again, I was also.
Well, you have a thing for weird women, so.
I no, like there was. So when I don't know, that's a bit dark, but like I've had like weird interactions with women too, so I kind of get where you're coming from.
Well, it's the thing of I'm gonna go all men's rightsy on this, but I'm gonna do it anyway. It's the thing of female boundaries are sacrosanct. If you violate a woman's boundary, you are the scum of the earth and will be fucking lynched if the angry mob catches up to you. But
Yeah,
if you're a man and have boundaries and a woman violates those boundaries, either you're lucky because it's presumed that men are barbaric and always want sex, or you should not care because it's just her being weird. Never
yeah,
mind that men being weird is never an excuse for when men get handsy. If a man gets handsy, he's out on his ass the second another man or a woman or a series of women figure it out. Then he's essentially socially blackballed.
yeah.
It's a simple matter of men are viewed as essentially appliances to be useful, and therefore their boundaries are not respected at all. Whereas women are viewed as somewhere between aristocrats and value objects. So if a man touches a woman, he's essentially touching someone above his station.
I mean, yeah, like I've had women like I know a chick pushed her titties in my face once. Then there was the what was it? I don't know if I can say it on stream. Well, I can probably say it on stream. It's like a bit dark though. It's like uh let's say
Go on.
when I was like a kid, a woman forced herself on me. There we go. I'll say that. I guess that's the safest way to say it on stream. Like a chick
Uh-huh.
sexually assaulted me, yeah, when I was a kid.
Uh-huh.
So yeah. Yeah, I've had
I,
like really dark experiences.
I've never been so happy to be unattractive in my life. Because people don't I think what it is people don't want to be seen as harassing the crippled kid. So my disability acts as its own boundary a lot of the times. fortunately.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, sorry.
but no, but yeah, like, uh, I mean, like, I don't know, like, I don't like to mention it because it's like very, very like dark.
Yeah. Huh.
Mm,
Anyway, moving forward.
yeah. Okay. The United States has long since lost its place as the only dominant economy in the world. Since the 1970s, the United States has had to once again compete with the rebuilt economies of Europe and Japan, as well as newly emerging economies. Despite diminishing living standards, the consumerism of Halloween continues. That that
Because people like nice things and people like buying nice things. It's
Pretty much,
it's
yeah.
it's really not as complicated or as dark as you're making it out to be. People enjoy buying nice things, and therefore they consume what they like to buy when they can buy things,
Yeah,
and therefore they buy things in order to make their lives better in some way. And holidays are a good excuse to buy things because they're
pretty much.
about celebrating shit.
That's the kind of culture we live in, where people can like buy what they want.
oh, I buy
and 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 then people like this will come along and say being able to buy what you want means you're oppressed by that money you have.
Shut the fuck up.
Somehow that means you're a slave to consumerism, derp. And I'm just like, okay, given the choice between being able to consume things and not being able to consume things, I will take being able to consume things.
It's like they're kind of like those weird, like far right types that want to ban porn. Like this is for your benefit, so we're going to take away something from you. Yes. Oh, also Dalton is dead. Wow.
No,
Uh,
I'm
that's
I'm sure he'll
well.
be on again. Could have been that his phone died. That's almost happened a few times on here.
Uh, so
Uh, I guess I'll continue reading.
I guess I'll be Dalton for right now. Then let's go.
That is actually horrific to think about, to be honest. I'm sorry.
Isn't it?
All right.
Well, I'm glad I could plant that image in your head.
Okay. At the same time, Halloween has shifted from its focus on kids and families to adults.
Let me see. Hold on, let me see. Where are you? Like,
Uh,
let me maximize the screen here. The commercial. Okay, it shifted its. Say that again.
okay. At the same time, Halloween has shifted from its focus on kids and families to adults.
I mean, Halloween, not really. I mean, Halloween is basically like a general audience type of holiday, if that makes any
I
sense.
will say that kids and families Halloweens are segmented to
Yeah,
an adult. Obviously, that's just how it works, really. Like there are grown up Christmas parties,
exactly. Yeah,
grown up birthday
like
parties, kids. It's just like
exactly. It's always been something for like adults. Like it's like you said, it's segmented, right? Like, welcome back, Dalton. Children have the trick or treat aspect of Halloween, and adults have the Halloween parties.
Yeah. What did I miss?
right. I just read the.
My phone died, so I had to
I should have called money on that.
Yeah,
change it around.
I knew it. Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, I read at the same time Halloween has shifted from its focus on kids and families to adults. That's where we started to discuss.
Uh,
yeah, pretty much.
as you and Corrupt were saying when I came in, Halloween parties have always, and I mean fucking always, like we have documentation of them doing it in the Middle fucking Ages. And again, during the time when it was banned by the likes of Oliver Cromwell, we have documentation of them doing Halloween parties in secret.
Yeah, because Halloween parties, like the act of celebration is fun for most people. Like humans are by nature highly social, and celebratory events are basically the peak of that like sociable nature of
Right.
like humans and shit.
Yeah,
Plus,
that's the whole reason why the Romans, when they converted to Christianity, basically created new reasons for people to keep their existing holidays, because
Yeah,
they tried converting people and telling them not to celebrate their holidays anymore, and the response came back: "We throw rotting skunks in your general direction. Fuck off. We're keeping our holidays."
exactly.
So they changed the holidays around so that they could fit within official doctrine. And
Yeah,
in cases where people like Oliver Cromwell, the asshole, tried to ban these festivals because they were quote unquote impious, um, people still kept celebrating them. They just celebrated it in secret.
right.
And when they were more forceful about it, things like Devil's Night happened, whereby that same celebratory impulse got twisted into an anarchistic impulse, because when you're actually being prevented from celebrating a thing that you want to celebrate, you go a little bit nuts.
Right. I also want to kind of like move it back to the segmented thing of like how kids Halloween parties are different to like grown up Halloween parties. Well,
yeah,
really in like just grown up parties and children's parties as well. It's just like uh, as a person gets older, they're both open to new. They are more open to experience new things that you couldn't as a kid, but could as an adult. Um, Granted, for me, it's kind of weird because I kind of just have the same thing on my birthday every year, which
yeah.
is just me, my family, and a birthday cake. That's pretty much it. And anyone says that's fucking sad, fuck you, because it's really not. It's just my life.
Again, I admire your lack of ambition, but it still makes me want to spoil you just because I think you deserve it.
Like what is it? Oracle or whatever. My sister. So her fucking birthdays are depressing. Her mom and just her mom just go out and have dinner with their family. That's pretty much it. It's the most depressing crap I've ever seen in my life. Like, do you do anything with your family? No, we
No,
just go out and have dinner. All right.
actually, we do go to like really nice places, places we don't really go to often. Um,
Golden Corral,
Steakhouse.
Longhorns.
I don't know if Logan's.
I've heard of Logan's.
We don't go there often. Multiple reasons why, but yeah, just nice places that we don't normally go to because don't have the time or really the money to do that.
All right, that makes sense. It's just like she doesn't even go to like a nice place. It's just like a restaurant her mom wants to go to, and it's
But
just like that's so boring.
right, but back to the Halloween thing. Okay, I'm reminded of the Robot Chicken sketch they did a few years ago, where it was basically a parody of "This Is Halloween." This is grown up Halloween. I don't know if you guys have seen that.
Yes, I have.
This is grown up. So what is grown up? I imagine grown up Halloween is exactly what I think it is.
With your dirty mind.
Sex.
Yeah, I'd have to find that clip. I don't want to play it here, but I could send it to you. Correct.
All
Yeah,
right.
nevertheless, getting back on point here. Halloween has always had a darker, more primal sexual aspect to it. That's a key feature of Halloween in general. It's in mystical terms, we refer to times like Halloween as being Saturnian or sublunar, because while Christmas or Yule or the winter solstice is all about keeping the light alive in the darkness, hearth, home, family, etc. Halloween is different. It's about the veneration of the forces of darkness and death. It's the way I like to explain it is Halloween is the counterweight to Christmas because the dark and light balance each other, and you need both of those to be fully rounded, essentially. You need a time that celebrates darkness, death, and sexuality just as much as you need a time that venerates life and hearth and home and wholesomeness. They balance each other.
Yeah, I would say so. Because
And go ahead. Sorry.
no, go ahead. Go ahead. Dalton.
And Halloween has always been more about the debauchery aspect of that. Whereas Christmas is more about we made it through the darkness. The way they phrased it in that one Doctor Who episode that I really like, the whole halfway out of the dark thing. That's what Yule or the winter solstice or Christmas is for. Halloween is more about let's knock down the pretenses. We kind of like and respect the darkness, and as well we should. Because for as wonderful as Christmas is, the hearth, the home, the wholesomeness, etc., it wouldn't really be a positive thing if it were forced on us. If we lived in Pleasantville or Stepford and were happy like that all the time, it not only would not be a good thing, it would actually be somewhat oppressive. Whereas Halloween allows us to acknowledge, for as much as we might fear the darkness, there are things that we rely on the darkness for, and those things are to be enjoyed and respected as well.
Pretty much like basically it's kind of the idea of with or it's kind of the sort of idea of like order and chaos. Like order is great, but you need like a little bit of chaos in your life, or order becomes oppressive and gives you like
Too
a way of
much
dominance.
order equals stagnation. Too much chaos equals dilapidation.
Yeah, basically, like
You,
a mixture of the two is always preferable.
you need enough order to make sure that the entropy is constructive, and enough entropy to make sure things actually are moving.
Exactly.
Or to put it another way, Halloween reminds you that rather than fear what's in the dark, you do have the option of making friends with what's in the dark.
Oh, well
Essentially.
said.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I've always fucking loved Halloween, because my solution to there's a monster in my closet is, well, if it won't want to eat me if I'm friends with it, essentially.
Right.
And the same is true of everything. If you become friends with the things you fear, then the thing you fear no longer is fearful. And in actuality, being friends with the things you fear kind of makes you a badass.
Right. So, sorry, it's just.
Moving on.
Yeah. The shift is best illustrated by the rise of the sexy Halloween costume. The sexy Halloween costume can be traced to Greenwich Village. Greenwich Village. Greenwich, whatever. In the 1970s, Greenwich Village hosted a family-friendly Halloween parade, but also was a center of gay culture. This was also true of Catholic Street and Polk Street in San Francisco and West Hollywood. Halloween was often the only time when gay men could wear clothing and makeup traditionally associated with the other gender in public without being harassed by the police. The LGBT community pushed the boundary of sexualized gender-bending costumes.
Okay, speaking as a bisexual dude who primarily prefers dudes, not your fucking shield, bitch.
Pretty much, yeah.
Also, sexuality has been associated with Halloween for centuries. Again, we just went into the whole Saturnian or sublunar aspect of it that was present in pagan culture. In fact, one of the reasons that Oliver Cromwell gave for wanting Halloween banned was specifically because it gave rise to quote unquote pagan sensuality or primitive sensuality.
Like, so to add on to what Dalton is saying, somewhat it may sound somewhat silly, but that's why when like people illustrate in like fiction, when they illustrate darker versions of a character, those versions or characters with a darker theme, they tend to be more sensual or sexy, because darkness and sexuality have kind of an intrinsic link to each other within people's minds, whereas like more virtuous or pious characters tend to be dressed
Chase.
more conservatively and chaste. Like
Yeah.
this isn't just like, oh, my capitalism. This is kind of like very primitive human nature.
Yeah,
Where
and again, given that she spent like a third of the article last week talking about the links between the celebrations of Samhain and the persecution of the witch trials, how were witches always depicted? How were witches' Sabbats always depicted in the Middle Ages?
like sexual
They
basically.
were always fucking nude and dancing around.
Yeah, like titties flopping out everywhere and shit. Yeah, and
The
dancing around in circles like while everyone's naked.
because the idea was pagans were the ones that were in touch with things that were primal and animalistic, and the most pleasurable form of primal animalisticness that people could think of, especially in the Middle Ages and in the post-Protestant Reformation era, when everything was all about modesty and chastity, kind of in a similar manner to modern day Islam, is what if the devil offered you sexual pleasure and the ability to be free and liberated and not wear the incredibly encumbering clothing that we all make each other wear?
Yeah,
The, the famous cliche of, oh, a woman without her bonnet, oh, a woman whose bodice was visible, oh, how scandalous. There's a reason why that was a thing, and it was because moralistic traditionalism always had an issue with sexuality, and times like Samhain, or what would become Halloween, were always heavily associated with sexuality. Not to mention its heavy association with things like fairies, who also were heavily associated with sexuality in the form of glamour, be it the summer fae or the winter fae. They all were unnaturally pretty and attractive because
and they
glamour.
were always naked too.
Yeah. Well, ish.
Well, for a
But
fair.
yeah, there is a lot of artwork of them being naked, but that's mostly stylized. Most often when we see visitations of Fae described, they are wearing clothes. They're just very they're scandalous by like Puritan or medieval standards, which again, that there it was considered a scandal if you could if you could see someone's ankles or something. So yeah.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. I've seen a lot of depictions of them like naked. I don't mean like modern depictions, but like older
Yeah,
medieval.
yeah, like a lot of depictions of Titania in Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream have her being naked and stroking Bottom's ears and whatnot.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we only got like 5 minutes left on this article before moving on.
Alrighty, move along then.
All right, the 1970s also saw the increased commercialization of Halloween. The 1940s and 50s saw the commercialization of children's costumes and trick or treating, but the 1970s expanded this into the adult market. Sexy costumes have become so popular that since the early 2000s, they have made up 90 to 95% of the female costumes. As a whole, adults in the U.S. spend $1.4 billion on Halloween costumes.
Okay. We've been burying the lead by talking about the actual folklore and stuff behind that, and that's good. But here's the other thing, the thing that's going to make this really, really uncomfortable for our dear writer here. Sexuality is a power that is wielded by people. It is not something that oppresses them. except under very specific circumstances. The reason why people choose, keyword choose, to dress in sexy costumes is because we all understand the notion that sexuality is a power to be wielded by the person being sexy. It
Pretty
is not
much.
so- it is not oppressive, it is something that will undermine your free will if you're too busy thinking with your other head and not with your rational one. Um,
So, like sexual, so it goes to the fundamental differences between men and women. Not in general, mind you, but like a lot of men and a lot of women. Like we perceive, like power is in power for men and women, or a lot of them anyway, comes in different forms. For women, it's sex, it's sexuality. That's like a power that that's unique to a lot of women. Is their sexuality. It and their ability and their
feminine power is manipulation and
yeah,
persuasion. Male power
exactly.
is utility and
And
forcefulness, basically.
exactly. That's kind of reflected in the attire that they wear. That's why male characters, a lot of them usually wear more like practical outfits, and they tend to be like physically pretty, like they tend to have like pretty faces and like powerful like armor, or they wear suits or something. Women tend to like wear more sexier outfits because their power comes
The,
from
the
their
the the
body.
more clothes a man wears, the more sexy he is. The fewer clothes a woman wears, the more sexy he is.
Exactly. Like
But
these are just like basic. These are just like basic like these are just like kind of basic to like how people see like women and men when it comes to power.
and we also have historical and mythological precedents for that. That's why there were always the idea of seductresses, be they the sirens, be they Circe. That's a great great sorceress or witch example.
Yeah.
Um, again, fairies.
Um,
Whereas male characters, they had sexy ones too, but most of male sexual like spirits, quote unquote, like satyrs, like
incubus.
centaurs, like the Minotaur, etc.
That is
Th-
disgusting. Oh my
th-
god.
well, but they all involve that the creature in question having the power to force itself upon you,
Yeah.
whereas female monsters, be they witches and sorceresses or sirens or fairies, have the power to convince you to come to them rather than forcing themselves upon you.
Yeah.
That there's the difference. But that once again goes back to my previous statement of either way you spin it, sexuality is a power, be it a physical one in the case of male people or male entities, or a persuasive one in the form of female individual or feminine individuals and feminine entities. Either way, people dress sexually because they understand the notion that sexuality is a power. In fact, the whole like in framework justification for witch hunts was witchcraft was essentially considered an extension of the sin of lust by misusing your sexual power or your generative impulse.
Okay.
Moving on though. Yeah.
Yeah, well, before we move on to this article, Giant Troll brings up two interesting things. One, uh, he says, I'm not sure if that is actually the role. Just look at Conan. He would just look weird in a suit. Regarding what you said, corrupt.
All right.
Well, that's fair, but what does the clothing men wear usually indicate about them?
Okay, wait. Regarding what I said, what I couldn't understand what you were saying. My internet was fucking up. Say that again, Brainstormer.
Regarding what you had said earlier about like men dressing more conservatively, and Giant Turtle brought up the example of Conan to kind of counteract that. Like that. Not sure if that's actually the rule or not.
Well, and what I was saying in defense of you, corrupt, there was what does the clothing men wear indicate about them? It indicates status.
Like that's why the stereotype, that's why the saying a man in uniform is sexy, basically. Like that's where that comes from.
Yeah.
Like
And
men wearing like uniforms is sexy. That's why so many that's why so much female focused that's why so many female focused like media depict men in like handsome men in like suits and
the
uniforms.
CEO, the Christian Greys, I can't think of any other off the top of my head example, but the various, rich, powerful men in their suits thing. And what I was also going to say, because I added to this point earlier, the reason why in general men are sexier when they're wearing clothing and women are sexier when they're not wearing clothing is because women who aren't wearing clothing are vulnerable and powerful, depending on how they are displaying their sexuality. Whereas men can look powerful with no clothing, but clothing is a very easy shorthand for the indicators of wealth and status. That's why aristocrats wear a bunch of frilly bullshit, because it's a visual public statement of, look at all this fancy shit I can afford to cover myself with.
All right, let me see. What hold on. Why can I hear what hold on. I'm having issues. Like I can hear Dalton clearly. I can't hear Brainstormer as clearly for some reason, and I don't know why. That's why I asked Brainstormer to like repeat himself because I didn't catch entirely what he had said. So like what was the contention with my statement exactly?
About the
Clothing, I guess clothing. What was the contention?
Dragon Turtle said something. I think we've addressed it.
What did Dragon Turtle say? What did they say?
I'm not sure if that is actually the rule. Just look at Conan. He would just look weird in a suit.
Let me see. Where is that statement anyway?
That's
It's in the chat.
I'm trying to look for it, but I can't see what he said. Anyway, we can move on because I can't. I'll look for it. I can't find
He was happy with the clarification one way or the other.
it. Okay.
But anyway, let's move on.
all right. Simply for time purposes and knowing us, we'll get sidetracked a lot with the video. I'm just gonna move on to the more happy thing.
Yay.
Yeah.
Oh, Conan. He would look weird in a suit. Oh, can I like comment on that just one right quick?
Sure.
Okay. Like I agree with you with some that's not a I don't think that's a firm rule with all men because like obviously there are naked men. Look, obviously like a man like Conan who's just raw sexual primal energy is attractive. Like I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
Like even though Dalton and I like like prefer men,
He's a,
like I think like a woman can see that too and be like, that's just sexy. Like
I
like it's not a hard and fast rule, but I think like that's more of a common that's but I think that's more of a common.
I think what Dragon Turtle is getting at is there are two different kinds of, I guess, attractive male archetypes.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
And you see this a lot in, particular in romance fiction, the idea of the beast male versus the noble male.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
the best example and the most applicable example that I think we'll all be familiar with is, it's the difference between Edward from Twilight and Jacob from Twilight.
Yeah.
Edward is the power in the abstract of wealth and nobility and money, whereas
Yeah, I would
Jacob,
agree with that. Yeah.
it is literally raw animal magnetism, and so much the better because we all need eye candy. But
I
that's
would,
neither here.
yeah,
But that's
yeah.
neither here.
I would say that's true. So yeah, there's two. There's like you said, there's two types of sexy men. Go ahead.
Uh,
The beast male and the noble male. And
Yeah,
I think what that is both varieties of men appeal to feminine peoples, because it doesn't just apply to women. It does definitely apply to gay men. I
yeah,
will confirm this.
yeah.
Um, but it both of these appeal to the concept of power is attractive. The difference is, which kind of power do you want? Do you want power in the physical aspect, in the he literally has bulging, rippling muscles, oh my god, so hot? Or do you want power in the abstract, which is he has status, he has money, he has clout, he has authority, he has wealth, he has manners, etc.
And the two of those are orgasmic
right.
Yeah.
combined.
Depending on which you prioritize, you're going to find one of these men attractive, or more so than the other. But ultimately, both are attractive, because I think men actually have an advantage here, because all of or almost all of women's attractiveness isn't self-contained. It's always in relation to other things. Whereas male attract things that make men attractive actually also convey their own power. Like, it is universally beneficial to have physical power or dominance or abstract status and wealth. Like,
Uh,
things that are attractive are also beneficial. But I think in women's cases, they kind of have a disadvantage here, because vulnerability, while being very attractive, especially to more masculine individuals, can get you screwed over if there's not anyone around to pay attention to it.
John Carpenter talks us through his favorite video games at 22. That's interesting.
right.
Is-
I think it was titled something else, but
Did anyone watch Halloween Ends?
I did.
How was it?
It was
Predict-
okay, and I'm being nice.
Oh, I saw Weapon, I saw a thumbnail by Weapon, and he's just like, "Oh, they massacred my boy," and I'm like,
Yeah,
it,
I think what it is for me is I've never been the biggest fan of the Halloween or Michael Myers franchise.
yeah,
So I'm not really invested in it.
I think
However, I don't really care about it one way or the other. I imagine if you are a massive Michael Myers fanboy, you're probably gonna like Halloween Ends a lot less, because for like 60% of the movie, it's not even about Michael directly. It's about the fact that Laurie's daughter is dating a guy who has similar psychological problems to Michael, and it's making Laurie extremely fucking paranoid. Um, and then, of course, towards the end of the movie, Michael ends up showing up, and him and Laurie go at it, because of course they do. That's about the cut and thrust of the movie. Is Laurie is paranoid Tiger Mom for like 50% of the movie, because her daughter is dating someone who resembles Michael in some ways, and then Michael actually shows up for the last like 40% of the movie, and then the inevitable clash of the siblings happens. That's the long and the short of it.
uh, what were you saying?
uh, well, I was gonna say like the newer Halloween movies have never really uh, grabbed me. I mean, the only thing that's ever really intrigued me about those movies is that John Carpenter scored them, and I've listened to those soundtracks. Like, he's an amazing director, but he's also like just a fantastic composer as well.
I didn't know that, actually, but
You didn't know he can? Okay, no.
I did not know that he was a composer as well. But good
I
for
didn't
him.
know that either.
Yeah, he can. Like, I think most of the time he's composed all his films scores. Don't quote me on that. I could be wrong.
Okay, well then, if that is the case, that's doubly impressive and good for you, sir. And it also gives me a lot of hope for Michael Giacchino, who recently transitioned from composing to directing with Moon Knight, or not Moon Knight, but Werewolf by Night, and it was really freaking good. So this could be very good news for the Marvel Universe's monster slash supernatural division.
Right. Anyway. Yeah, this is from avclub.com, written by William Hughes and published October 11th, 2022. So John Carpenter talks us through his favorite video games of 2022, plus scoring Halloween Ends. Carpenter, an avid gamer when he's not serving as composer and executive producer on the new Halloween films, reveals the games he loves now.
Another thing I didn't know. I didn't realize that John Carpenter was a
Yeah.
massive gaming nerd. But
like he has to like Scorn, like at least visually, I would think.
I mean, ever more respect for John Carpenter, as if I needed another reason to respect John Carpenter. But
I would say he's kind of one of those directors that just isn't pretentious about his stuff. He just makes good stuff, or just wants to make good movies and stuff.
Wes Craven is the same way. I've always really liked Wes Craven for that same reason of just being a nerd's nerd, basically.
Yeah. All right. So John Carpenter is a legend, and he's exactly the sort likely to scoff when you tell him that fact to his face.
I mean, I can understand where he's coming from, but at the same time, I mean, it's good that he's humble enough to not be up his ass, because we've seen what happens when even people with actual talent become so up their ass. Cough, cough, Alan Moore. Cough, cough, Neil Gaiman. But at the same time, I feel bad for him that he can't really accept the fact that he's a fucking legend, because that's the curse of creative people. Either they are aware of how good they are, in which case they're assholes and egotistical fuckwits, George Lucas, Neil Gaiman, Alan Moore, etc., or they're good creatives that never are willing to accept they're good at what they do, and so they'll always undersell themselves. I think given the choice between those two things, it's better for creators to be the second one, but at the same time I feel bad for the second one, because they create such awesome shit and never are fully able to accept that they created awesome shit. It's kind of like when Robin Williams killed himself. I felt really bad because I could see kind of where he was coming from. The fact that he masked his pain and his depression by choosing to make other people laugh.
Well, yeah, Dalton just got real, bro.
I mean that's why I will forever have respect for people like Robin Williams and John Carpenter, because if you are a sad person and you instead of wallowing in that pain, channel that pain into making other people happy, that's some like if I were in charge of the universe, that would get you a one-way trip to heaven, but I'm not in charge of the universe. More's the pity.
Probably a good thing you want, to be honest.
This is also true, because I would have just as arbitrary rules for hell if I were in charge of the universe. Like you stymie to creative work in your attempt to be moralistic and stupid. To hell with you, literally. But that's neither here nor there.
It's like a giant trapdoor or something.
All right. In his role as so he was co-composer on David Gordon Green's continuations of his beloved Halloween. A fun fact: he actually wasn't that. He actually didn't really want to make a second Halloween movie.
No, he considered it like a lesser project of his.
Yeah, he wanted to make anthologies, didn't he? That's why we got like the.
Yeah, he wanted to actually make a Halloween anthology series. He didn't want Michael Myers to be the main character, which honestly, speaking as someone who doesn't really care for the Halloween franchise, primarily because they're not really about Halloween, except for what's the third one? Season of the Witch.
Yeah.
Speaking of someone who doesn't really care for the Halloween movies because they're not actually about Halloween, I would have much rather have seen a series of Halloween anthology movies in which Michael Myers was just one of them.
I think the original purpose was that Michael Myers acts kind of like a figure
Jason?
that acts like a figure, similar to like Sam from Trick or Treat.
Yeah. That would have been nice lore for him, but unfortunately we are where we are.
Again, don't quote me on that because it's been a while since I've done any research into that.
No, that seems to I've heard similar things that seems to be consistent with what I've heard, which just goes to show that I'm right for not liking the Michael Myers movies after all these years.
I mean, like Season of the Witch was like I didn't really care for Season of the Witch, but I get where it was coming from. He wanted to make like an anthology series that was more focused on like different stories than just like man who never dies for some reason.
Yeah, I like Season of the Witch because it actually incorporates folklore about Halloween, like the whole Samhain thing and the Celtic roots of it, and so on and so forth.
Like,
It's a really weird movie, but it also is the only movie in the Halloween franchise that
That's
actually
about
seems to be
Halloween, right?
about Halloween. So
Yeah.
it just makes me happy.
I mean, yeah, it even incorporates like It even incorporates like witches and shit, like literal witches, like the
Yeah.
guy who wanted to kill like shit tons of children.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Moving on.
In his role as composer on David Gordon Green's continuations of his beloved Halloween, Carpenter is apt to refer to himself and his collaborators as carpetmen, brought in to install a background element rather than claiming any more obvious creative role. Honestly, that sounds like something I'd do.
Again, I didn't realize that John Carpenter was this kind of creative, but I have more respect for him now.
So do I, actually. It's kind of interesting.
A longtime outsider from the Hollywood system, Carpenter is well known for an irascible, self-deprecating wit and a naturally blunt honesty, both of which were on fine display in our recent conversation with him about Scoring Green's upcoming Halloween Ends. The conversation naturally drifted, though, to one of Carpenter's other big passions, video games, discussions of which often make up a healthy chunk of the director's online conversations in recent years.
I almost want to ask John Carpenter what he thinks of Gamergate now, but I don't want to get him caught in the 5-alarm shitstorm that would inevitably follow if he supported Gamergate. So.
I'm curious as to what types of games he actually likes.
Yeah. All right. So let's continue. Okay. And so it went here as Carpenter readily dove in to talking about all his favorite video games in 2022. What game franchise he'd adapt for the screen if he had his way, and what he thinks about Metal Gear creator Hideo Kojima, whose signature creation, Solid Snake, bears a slight resemblance to Carpenter's own reptilian named cinematic badass Snake Plissken from Escape from New York. I've actually not seen that movie. I want to, but I've never gotten around to seeing it.
You would really enjoy Escape from New York.
I'm surprised you of all people haven't seen it, actually.
Well,
I'm in the same place where I'm like, how has Brainstorm not seen this?
I had a very interesting upbringing, so watching old movies was not really capable at the time.
Well, I'm adding this to the list of things that I need to tie you to the Clockwork Orange chair for.
Yeah. But I've seen videos about Escape from New York, and also checked out stuff about Metal Gear Solid, because that game takes a lot of inspiration from a lot of American stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, which is interesting. I mean, just see how another culture views America and its things. So
The Japanese are weirdly like almost what you could call Americophiles sometimes, which is funny because we Americans, a lot of us tend to be otaku in return. Like they're
Yeah,
busy fetishizing American culture, where we're slowly but surely fetishizing Japanese culture more and more.
right.
pretty much.
It's funny how that works.
You know, and then you have some people who fetishize like Russian culture. There you
Also,
In Soviet Russia, culture rapes you.
I'm still wondering what's going on with that Metal Gear Solid movie.
I want to believe it can be good because I've seen the like video game curse, quote unquote, be broken more recently, but at the same time I'm worried that because
It's a big and weird franchise.
yeah, after seeing what they did to Resident Evil, I'm just sitting here like, please don't fuck up Metal Gear Solid.
Oh
Please
my
don't fuck up
god!
Metal
Like, don't let it be made by Netflix because they'll turn it into like just absolute shit.
Well, it was
Oh my fucking god.
director for it. I'm sorry, this is like this tangent here. But if I remember, the director for the Metal Gear Solid movie, can't remember his name at this moment, but he's the guy who made Kong Skull Island and Godzilla King of the Monsters and Godzilla versus Kong.
Different people. There were different people behind all three of those. And I remember because the guy behind King of Monsters was Michael Dougherty, my favorite unsung director.
Right,
I like how in Godzilla vs Kong the main villain was just Gendo Ikari. I'm sorry, Hispanic Gendo Ikari.
Yeah. Ah.
okay, I'm doing a quick look up just because I. Um, okay, so no, it was the guy who did Kong Skull Island then. That's my bad.
Yeah.
Jordan Volk Roberts. I think I said that wrong, but
You mispronounce everyone's names.
yeah.
Brainstormer got no shame.
All right. The AV Club. When you watch someone else's Halloween movie to score it, is it hard to stay in composer mode? John Carpenter. Well, occasionally I'll have an opinion. Sometimes I'll share it with David, and sometimes I'll just shut up. I'm a composer now. I'm supposed to make him happy. Forget me. Is it hard?
I love the self-deprecating nature of him, but at the same time, bitch, you're John Carpenter. If you have an opinion about a movie, you share that opinion about the movie, damn you.
Right.
You have earned the right to be a pompous git sometimes.
He is very humble. I will say that.
Like I enjoy the humbleness because it's so refreshing and so glorious. Because I wish more creative sites were like that. But at the same time, you you can voice your opinion without being a totalitarian git. Yeah. So
yeah,
why?
because his opinion does hold weight.
Well, that and it's not like Blumhouse or even the guy he's talking about would resent giving him a co-writer's credit or something. Like, can you imagine the fangasm of like, yeah, we brought in John Carpenter to compose for us, and he ended up having so many great ideas for the sequel that he's now a co-writer. That would instantly like get all the Halloween movie fans on board, and several people who just like John Carpenter in general.
So the AV Club asked, "Is it hard to do?" And he said, "Hell no, hell no," which I think is a response to his previous statement.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. With the soundtrack itself, how do you balance giving people those familiar Halloween sounds alongside doing something new? Well, it depends. Everything just comes out of the story and the characters. So if we have a new character, like we do with Halloween ends, we developed a theme for them, and we utilize that, but sometimes we use the old stuff. All of this is a matter of judgment and instinct. That's all it's about. I know that's not very sexy to say, but judgment and instinct is the whole deal.
Why are the sane people not making things? The sane people need to make things, and the insane people need to shut the fuck up.
Because the insane people are young. Because some of the insane people are younger, or they have positions of power.
Or they're arrogant enough to think they have all the answers, whereas the actually sane people are humble enough to step aside even when they shouldn't.
Yeah.
Fate is a cruel, ironic bitch.
Uh,
She is.
The people with no talent are arrogant enough to assume they have all the talent, and the people humble enough to know their place have the skills but don't have the balls to defend themselves. This is just it's a tragic irony. The people we want to hear from are too humble to speak, and the people we don't want to hear from are too arrogant to ever shut the fuck up. It's just sad.
do you like the movie? Asks Savvy Club, and Mr. Carpenter says, "Yes, I do. It's a very, very interesting movie."
I kind of think that he was trying to keep himself from saying anything there. That sounds like a very canned response.
Shifting gears slightly, are you familiar with the phrase elevated horror? I don't know what that means. I mean, I can guess what it means, but I don't really know.
Humility for the win once again from Mr. Carpenter. Please stop the arrogant people from talking.
Elevated horror. I feel like I'm.
It's pseudo-intellectual claptrap for we can't acknowledge that horror is valid in and of its own sake. We have to append a bunch of commentary to it to make it matter. Derp.
Oh, so okay. Well, I mean, it kind of goes explaining the next question.
Mm-hmm.
People usually use it to refer to A24 movies, horror that's very heavy on the metaphorical, Hereditary, Midsommar, movies like that. And John Carpenter says, "I have no idea what you're talking about."
I, I, I think we're officially at the point at which we can call based John Carpenter.
Right. Fair enough, but I hear you. I hear you. There's a metaphorical horror, but all movies they don't have messages. They have themes, thematic material, and some horror films have thematic material. The good ones do.
I I
Well,
think he might
like,
be split. I get what he's saying, and I think if I talked to him, he would agree. But I think, especially lately, the idea of themes has become so inextricably linked with the idea of messages and metaphors that both are essentially poison at this point.
fair.
Because, but that's that. Again, I'm willing to give John Carpenter the benefit of the doubt because he has shown himself to be based in just about every other facet. So fine.
What's the balance that needs to be struck there between the themes and just scaring the shit out of people? When a scary scene comes along, we should be scared. I think that's what it was meant to say. It all depends on what we're looking at on the screen. That balance is done by the director, referring to himself and his composing team. We're just carpet men here. Your hardwood floors need a carpet, we'll provide it.
I mean, again, I appreciate the humility of Mr. Carpenter, but if anyone has the right to be egotistical at this particular juncture, it is you, sir.
Do you come up with new horror films at this point? Some of them, not all of them, but some of them I do, sure. Yeah, to be honest, I kind of do the same thing. Well, to be fair, horror is not really my go-to for
Yeah. But again, we find ourselves on the precipice of another based John Carpenter.
Wait,
Ism.
I've actually found that kind of interesting that you aren't into horror, Brainstormer.
Well, okay, the newer types of horror, simply because I don't. Well, one, I don't think there's really.
Any good horror out?
No, okay, because my favorite type of horror is like horror comedy or like the schlocky kind of B movie style, like Evil Dead.
Oh, okay.
Slasher stuff.
Okay, you're not into serious horror, basically.
Or over pretentious horror that thinks it's being serious.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
I think you like the campy, pulpy, old school horror. I think is what you're going for there, and I agree. I agree with you. I tend to favor more that style of horror myself.
Like I tend to prefer serious horror. I guess I've never really been into comedic horror, although I know that's popular.
Not lately.
I mean, I've been recently binge watching a bunch of Vincent Price movies because for some reason there's 10 different Vincent Price movies for free on Amazon Prime. And I've always loved Vincent Price because Vincent Price is awesome just in general, and he's also one of the inspirations for Doctor Frickin' Strange. But nonetheless, I love Vincent Price so fucking much, and his contributions to B horror movies are just amazing. And again, not to mince words too much here, but one of Vincent Price's movies called The Raven inspired Doctor Strange in 1963. So I will forever be a simp for Vincent Price, even just for that reason. But there are plenty of other reasons because I honestly feel like Vincent Price and I would have gotten along if he had lived long enough. Oh, why are all the good people either dead or silent, while all the idiotic people won't shut the fuck up? I will never know.
In your recent New Yorker interview, you talked about Let the Right One In. Yeah, I really like that movie. That was really interesting, and it covered some new ground, which I'm always pleased about. That's also another thing is that I don't think there's not really a lot anything new in horror that grabs me.
Yeah, because they just they're not invested enough in their own stories or their own storytelling to actually come up with any interesting ideas. It's the same with a lot of genres. They don't care enough about their own material, so why the fuck should we care?
All right. One of the reasons that I wanted to talk to you is because you talk a lot about video games online, and I'm the games editor for the site. Oh, what a good man you are, says John. Mr. Carpenter.
Based John Carpenter again.
What have you been playing lately? I got hooked on this Fallout 76 game. Been hooked for a good long time on it. I know it had bugs coming out, and a lot of it was put down, but I thought it was great. It was really fun to play. And I keep up with Borderlands and Horizon Forbidden West. I love that game. Fantastic. What a design. Mind blowing.
Let me see. What else? Elden Ring. I'm surprised he's never played Elden Ring.
Right. Yeah, seems like you're drawn to games that are more open world kind of exploration. What about those games appeal to you? Well, it's fun. You're freedom to roam around and do it your way, and that's what I love about Fallout. There's a template to follow, missions, but you can do it differently. And they keep coming up with new missions every once in a while and new ideas. It's good. It's really interesting. But I have time for a Crash Bandicoot and a Ratchet and Clank and stuff like that too.
Funny story. Crash Bandicoot was the very first video game I ever played.
Really?
Yep.
I can't remember.
My grandma's boyfriend had a PS1, and I that was the first video game I ever got introduced to.
I kind of thought that I thought you'd be a role playing kind of like Skyrim kind of guy.
Uh, I've I just simply don't have the hand-eye coordination to play a lot of video games, to be fair.
Ah, okay, that makes
But
sense.
in general, I'm more of a retro gamer. Like like I really loved Cuphead. Cuphead was the last game that I played that I really enjoyed playing because it had that kind of retro side scroller vibe, and of course there was the classic like cartoon motifs in it, and of course the you know mystical aspect of you're working for the devil, basically.
What's sad is that like I have huge issues with like coordination, like that, and I have like really bad vertigo, and I
Hmm.
have like depth perception issues, so like I can't even play it. I can't even play those types of games.
What was? I'm sorry. I'm trying to remember the first game I played.
I think the first game I've ever played was like, what was the first game I ever played? I think the first game I've ever seriously played was like this game called Xenogears, and that was like it was a PlayStation 1 Japanese role playing game. And like essentially it used like it was weird cuz okay, so essentially there was there was this underground faction that referred to like surface dwellers as lambs basically. It was really interesting. It had like a lot of like Christian iconography to it.
Hmm.
It
Neat.
combined like mechs and medieval. Like it was very interesting.
Hmm.
Cool.
I think it was Kingdom Hearts.
Did you care for it?
I barely remember it, dude. To be fair, I have never finished any video game I've ever played.
Really?
Yeah, I have a bad habit of not finishing games
Okay,
too. Yeah.
actually no. I finished Call of Duty games, like the Modern Warfare series, when I played them.
Yeah, those have like relatively like quick campaigns too, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I kind of stopped being an avid gamer when I got into like high school. Um, just because I had a lot of other things to do, and that's where I really started to get like kind of lean more into that, like just actually doing work of like writing and stuff. And so like kind of gaming kind of fell to the wayside for me.
And the
I can see
rest
that.
is history. But that's neither here nor there.
Uh,
Moving
uh,
on.
wait, if I can go back to the gaming
No, go
conversation.
ahead. Sorry.
All right, no problem. There was a game that I played that like a long time ago that I was addicted to. It's called Tactics Ogre, and essentially it was like this sort of highly political type of like Japanese game. Basically, one of the most I guess like impactful moments in that game for me was that you have the choice to help. So you're a part of a rebel faction that's like rebelling against like against like this oppressive regime that's like kind of wiping out your ethnicity basically. It's like
Hmm.
wiping you out and enslaving your people, and you have like and there comes a moment when you have two choices you can make. You can you can so okay, so basically you have to go and rescue like a bunch of of your people who are like captured basically and being used as sort of slaves, but they have no will to fight. So you have the option of killing them and pretending to be the other faction so that you can so that you can basically turn them into martyrs and create a resistance among the rest of your people basically who are captured who are like enslaved by this like oppressive regime. And or you have the option of not doing that and sort of like going off on your own with your friend to like find another way to like fight against your oppressors and shit. And it's really fascinating how it's really fascinating because there's like a law and or there's like a law versus chaos type of system, and there are all these like really difficult moral choices that you can make in the game to like, and that basically impacts the ending.
I see.
And they also affect like the type of people who you can recruit. It's really interesting.
Hmm.
Like I said, the idea that you can basically participate in really the wholesale slaughter of your own people in order to like inspire a rebellion. It's like so just it's such an interesting like choice that it always stuck with me.
There's a game that you would really like, but I can't remember the name of it, and I wish I could. I'll have to ask my one friend about it because he recommended it to me, and it sounds like something you'd really like. God damn it, I can't remember.
Um,
I'll message it to you later. I think.
Call of Duty Newground. Call of
No,
Duty.
no.
he's
I
playing-
remember getting really into the Castlevania games. The Castlevania game lore is really interesting.
It really is. Like I think you'd really like Castlevania actually. Like Call of Duty is like wait, brainstorming, you said you played Call of Duty, right? Have
yeah,
you ever played Battlefield?
I played a spin-off of it, which was Battlefield Hotline. It's more like it's like cops and robbers stuff.
Oh, okay.
Never like the mainline games.
Okay.
I'll be honest, I really only worked a lot with. Also, I was a big fan of the Assassin's Creed games.
Okay, that makes sense too, especially with how complicated the lore is. Where, like, if I understand it correctly, you're in a virtual reality that sends you back to the past, and you play as your ancestor. Is that right?
Yeah,
Okay.
We did a live stream on Assassin's Creed lore a long time ago. I think it's still on the channel.
yeah. It was me trying to rewrite the 2016 movie with Michael Fassbender.
Oh, I never
Because
got.
my God, was that bad? The
I
video game curse struck again. It
When I-
wasn't as bad as some of the other video game adaptations, but that's not a high bar.
I think it was just like it was. It's just
Did it-
like the kind of fun that the games had.
Mhm.
Did,
It's like
did it?
super serious.
Okay, it was super serious.
Yeah.
Oh, did it try to emulate the game's like really complicated lore where it's like you're in a headset?
It honestly never really touched upon it.
Really? So it was just
It grounded everything too much. It pulled a Resident Evil.
oh, that sucks. Like with a game like Castlevania.
Also, the weirdest thing is it had scenes that were kind of vital for things cut out.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to
Yeah.
Mr. John Carpenter and
I'll be
his
right
gaming
back, hold on.
choices.
Mhm. All right. Just played new Ratchet and Clank, PlayStation 5 one. I did. I love it. Said Mr. Carpenter. Have you tried Elden Ring? No, it sounds like a role playing game. Is that what it is? It's from the people who did Dark Souls. It's role playing action, kind of open world. Also, you recommend it? Asked Mr. Carpenter. Yeah, it's on the more difficult side, but if you like going through a big, interesting looking countryside, it's pretty great. I'll try that.
John Carpenter is now going to be trying Elden Ring. That's hilarious.
Oh, this is a fun one. Have you ever considered writing a soundtrack for a game? If somebody asked me, I sure would. But no one's asked.
Well, I think all of the video game industry just went, hold our collective beers. That's all you had to say, Mr. Carpenter. And if they didn't just go hold our collective beers, I'm ashamed of all of you.
Maybe we can change that. Any of your albums would work great with games. Well, thank you. I would love it. Would be fun, huh? Fun for me.
Again, I love the sincerity of John Carpenter being John Carpenter.
The only game that's ever been licensed from your work is The Thing from 2002, right? Oh yeah, that's fabulous. I like that game.
I didn't realize just how much of a cinnamon roll John Carpenter was. I wouldn't have pegged that from his material.
Are you familiar with the name Hideo Kojima? John Carpenter said, yeah, yes. Have you met him? He has a character named Solid Snake. I do know about Solid Snake. I know about that. No, he wrote me. I think he wrote me in lieu of the company paying me any money whatsoever.
Wah, 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 wah.
He just said, hey, how you doing? But I know who he is, sure. Have asked the question, have you played these games? Oh no, my son did. I looked at them, but I didn't play them. We've talked a lot about Assassin's Creed games online. Do you have a favorite from that series? Huh.
It's a small world after all. It's a small world after all.
Okay. I did like Valhalla. That was pretty damn good. I like the early ones a lot, where you had to climb up the towers and synchronize. I love that. And there was Assassin's Creed Origins. I wasn't fond of that game because it seemed repetitive. Anyway, I don't know. I don't want to criticize.
Aww. It's almost too sweet. I kind of want to see how he would criticize things.
Are you playing these games mostly are you playing these games for the story mostly, or is it about the play for you? It's all about the gameplay. It's all about that. Nothing else matters. I mean, I'll play a badly designed but great game.
I mean, I kind of disagree with him there, but then again, I'm a lore freak, so
Yeah, honestly, it's 50-50 for me. Like, I'm the guy in the middle here.
Mm.
What falls under that? Badly designed but great. I can't tell you one right offhand, but old games are generally not as well designed as the newer ones. They're not as smooth, the graphics are not as good and sophisticated, but still, they're fun to play sometimes, you know? You started playing games with Sonic the Hedgehog. Are there any other old games you revisit very often? Sure, Jak and Daxter. You recall that game? Love that game. Well, the first one especially.
Again, I'm amused by just how adorably humble John Carpenter is.
Adorably humble. I like that.
But because he made like a lot of the pop culture that we grew up with,
Pretty much, yeah.
and yet he's just kind of nonchalantly just doing his own thing all the time, and I almost wish someone would explain to him just how much impact he had, because I feel like he should know. It doesn't seem like he even knows how much of an impact he's had.
He invented whole genres of
But
he invented a genre.
the entire like horror movie boom of the '80s is like partially him, partially Wes Craven, and partially Clive Barker. Like those three guys did basically defined the entire horror movie genre of the entire decade of like the '80s and '90s.
I'm surprised no one's ever asked him about no one asked him about Scorn. I feel like he would really like that game.
Apparently, he's going to be playing Elden Ring now because the interviewer recommended it. So
yeah.
Interesting because that studio has gone on to do the Last of Us games. Have you played those? I have. I got stuck on The Last of Us 2. I couldn't get the generator started. Got frustrated. Fair enough. Well, it isn't fair. I wanted to keep going, but they didn't let me. Okay, this is kind of getting to the part where I wanted to talk about the most. Do you have any interest in ever? Oh, hold on. Yeah. Okay. Do you have any interest in ever adapting a game? Last of Us TV show is in the works right now. The Last of Us TV show, Mr. Carpenter asked. Yeah, HBO is making it. Are you kidding me? That's unbelievable. Unbelievable. It's Craig
John Carpenter, please make a video game adaptation. I want it.
Craig Mazin, who did Chernobyl. Oh wow, Chernobyl was great.
Like, I'm probably the only person who's not watched Chernobyl that I know.
I haven't seen it.
I've seen bits of it. It's pretty amazing, actually.
I hear that the woman who did the 2019 Joker soundtrack scored that movie too.
It's a show, but yes, she did. Hildur Guðnadóttir, I believe is her name. She needs to score more things.
Have you ever thought about adapting a game? The only one I can think of, and I've mentioned it before, is Dead Space. That would make a real great movie. I could do that.
Oh my god, I would love a Dead Space movie.
John Carpenter's Dead Space.
I mean, he's kind of already done that. He would just have to also add sci-fi elements, which he has done before in movies.
Take all of the money. Why did no executive immediately after reading this go, get me John Carpenter's agent right the hell now?
I mean, like, the thing about Dead Space, the thing about The Thing is that it has a similar feel and tone to it that Dead Space does, really.
Yeah, it would lend itself to John Carpenter's John Carpenterism quite well. Again, why is John Carpenter's Dead Space not a thing? It needs to be a thing.
Yeah.
It should be again, like I don't want to do Hollywood's job better than Hollywood does, but if I were an executive right now, I would be like, get me the IP owners for Dead Space right the fuck now. And then I would be like, okay, how many hundreds of millions of dollars do I have to give you to give me the rights to Dead Space? And then after that conversation was done, I'd be like, get me John Carpenter. Oi, John, you know how you said you wanted to make a Dead Space movie? Well, how does $100 million sound budget wise? And then the greatest video game movie in history would be produced. Like, this is not hard. Like, insert awesome director A into appropriate IP B and go. It's not hard.
All right. You have a favorite?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, I'm just trying to move on and get through this thing. Do you have a favorite out of that series? Well, any of them are really good. I even like the last one, the action one that nobody else liked. I actually have never played Dead Space myself because it's not really. Again, it's not really. I'm not really big on horror games.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really have any experience with it myself. I just know about it, and honestly, again, John Carpenter's Dead Space. This really shouldn't be this hard. If no one in Hollywood had the brains to, after reading this article, go, how much do you want for the Dead Space IP, and then call up John Carpenter, then Hollywood really does deserve to burn, because this is a golden opportunity, gift wrapped and handed to you on a silver platter, and apparently no one has jumped at this opportunity.
I mean, that would be an amazing movie. Like,
well, it's not even just that it would be amazing. It's that John Carpenter himself is basically asking to do it, and it's publicly consumable for everyone to see. And it's like, you're telling me I could get one of the greatest horror directors ever to do a video game movie, and he wants to do it? Shut up and take my money. Again, it's one of those things of, you couldn't ask for a better opportunity if you were a movie executive, if one literally slapped you upside the head. And yet, apparently, that there's been no news of anyone jumping on this and being like, John, how much do I have to pay you to make a Dead Space movie like you said you wanted to?
Right.
Seriously,
Okay.
because like that would be amazing. The horror alone would be so great. Oh my god! Like he'd understand the tone and everything.
I mean, tell me that there is a nerd alive who wouldn't immediately jump on. John Carpenter asked to make a Dead Space movie, and then someone gave him the budget to make a Dead Space movie. Because that is PR gold right there. That is a movie that literally sells itself.
In my opinion, anyone who's seen The Thing knows that John Carpenter can make an amazing Dead Space movie if he's given the chance.
Well,
And I
also,
mean, it's a game he's also played, which puts him head and shoulders above all the other directors. Because the problem with modern day movie directors is they just don't like to engage with popular culture, even
Yeah.
as they're adapting popular culture. And it's like, this is why you always fail. But John Carpenter,
Oh.
number one is John Carpenter, and number two, he has a vested interest in these games. So why?
Oh my god, that's so true. That's so fucking true. Like so many directors despise popular culture. Like it's ridiculous.
Even as they're involved with making it. But anyway, moving on.
You get scared while playing games? Well, I don't like things jumping out at me and threatening my character. No, don't threaten my character. I want to survive. A lot of games, they penalize you for dying. It's one of the things I like about Fallout. They don't penalize you. You die over and over again on a hard mission. I like that.
I love that John Carpenter of all people is just like, fuck jump scares. So oh god.
That's a multiplayer game too. Do you interact with people all on that one? I don't want to be shamed by some young punk. You know, that's what's going to happen. They're going to shame me. They're all better than I am. I'm just trying to get by. I'm not that good.
This is just glorious.
How many hours would you say you logged with Fallout 76? I don't know. It's sick. Whatever it is really sick. I'm addicted to it. It's too many hours, okay? That's what it is.
Oh my fucking god. This is hilarious. Moving on.
How does gaming fit into your regular routine? It's a big part of my life. I enjoy it. It's a lot more fun than directing movies. That's hard work. That's stressful. This is relaxing. I can play anytime I can. I'll play anytime I can. Sorry.
Well, I imagine since he's John freaking Carpenter, he has enough money that if he chooses not to direct a single movie ever again, he'll still be set for life. So he can game whenever the fuck he wants to. But that being said, I still want him to direct a Dead Space movie.
So do I.
Because it's like he wants to. He would be, his sensibilities as a director would be perfect for the material, and the internet would explode in joy if he announced he was going to make a Dead Space movie.
I'll be honest.
How is this not an instant $100 million blockbuster?
You'll be honest. What?
Brainstormer.
Thank you. I almost forgot. I almost forgot what I was going to say.
Right. I was gonna say. I was trying to think like because Dead Space is not really like one of those. I'm aware of it. And I've done some research into like the lore of it, which is interesting. Don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm trying to think of like a game, not necessarily one I've played myself, but one that I've gone interested in that I would love to see adapted. I don't know if you guys know this one, but American McGee's Alice in Wonderland. Yeah.
Yes.
And Alice Returns. Those movies.
Oh my god.
Okay, so who would you want to direct an adaptation of it?
Well, I think logically it would make sense to also have the original creators work with the creators of this show as well to make sure, like.
Right, but who would you want to be behind the?
That's a good question. At first, my general pick would be my first pick would have been Tim Burton, but we have seen what he has done with Alice in Wonderland.
So
Yeah, for some reason, despite the fact that it would make all the sense in the world, Tim Burton doing Alice in Wonderland is not a good thing.
okay. So here's the thing about that, right? A long time ago, like really long, like early aughts or whatever, there was supposed to be an Alice in Wonderland, an Alice American McGee's Alice movie. Um, what's the Becca Michelle Gellar? Is that her name? Sarah Michelle
Sarah,
Gellar.
Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Sarah Michelle Gellar was going to play the role of Alice, and she was pushing to have this movie made.
Oh,
Wait, Buffy the Vampire Slayer is
Yes,
playing Alice. Okay, shut
that
up
was
and
the
take
long.
all my money.
That was like it was like a long time ago, but like it never got made, and it went to uh, like studio production hell. But like it was supposed to be made. Like I think they
Oh,
showed
that's
like one picture of it, but it was like, oh yeah, it was supposed to be in the works.
oh,
It would have been
that's
amazing, man.
all the good ideas die young.
or a
Oh,
Castlevania style anime adaptation of Legacy of Kain.
I would love that. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, because I don't really think it would work well in live action. Just on the designs of the characters.
Yeah, I think it would work well as an anime as well as live action. Honestly,
Yeah. Um,
like, but with like anime, you can replicate this. You can replicate basically the visual style with and you can basically do that with live action as well.
yeah. Um, anyway, a couple more things left to read here, and
Yeah, next.
then to kind of also end on just fun little thing to tie up with Halloween stuff.
Mm-hmm. Next.
Yeah. Uh, do you have anything you wish was different in modern games? Anything you'd like to see change? Oh hell no! Keep going, keep making great ones. That's what I say because they're all good. I don't have any criticism of them. I don't want them to do something they're not doing. What they're doing is very good. I started in 1992, Sonic the Hedgehog, trying to figure out how the fuck to play that game. Oh god, it was tough for me. I mean, nobody else, I'm sure.
Okay, I wish somebody had had the foresight to ask him what he thinks of the Sonic movies. But
And if
unfortunately, I
that
don't think
good,
we're ever. I don't think this person is plugged. I don't think the interviewer is plugged in enough to ask him the appropriate question here.
not really. It's probably just some. It's probably just some like casual sort of guy who basically goes along with whatever is popular in like the current cultures, I guess. That's why I
Mm-hmm.
asked about Elden Ring.
Although apparently John said he wants to play Elden Ring now because the interviewer recommended it to him. So yeah, we now live in a world where within some kind of short order, John Carpenter is going to start playing Elden Ring because he wasn't awesome enough already.
Those are rougher games than people may remember. Uh, oh god, horrifyingly bad. Tough, the early games, they were merciless. They make them easier sometimes now. Referencing like the Sonic the Hedgehog game, like the arcade games.
Mm-hmm.
I I went to like a campground once, and they had an arcade there. I never really got to play anything though, because the stuff didn't work.
Aw.
Did play mini golf though, because they had a mini golf course.
Ha.
I feel like my generation missed out on like cool stuff in a mall kind of deal. That
Yeah, a bit. Malls have been slowly dying for a while, and COVID did them no favors.
You get a sense of accomplishment when you finish a hard mission in a game. Yes, oh yeah, I feel proud of myself and celebrate by, I don't know, smoking a joint.
Ha.
Alright, that should be it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I don't really have anything to say about the article itself, but just kind of thinking about like because we talked about like Halloween earlier, like the movie and like the kind of slasher genre, which is kind of like the genre of in terms of horror movies that I really like.
Mm-hmm.
And it just reminded me of a project that I haven't worked on in about a year or so. And I've talked to Dawn about this, and I'm going to keep it kind of brief and simple, so not to give like concepts away. But I do plan on like releasing this.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just fun to talk about for a brief moment. Obviously, it's like related to the slasher genre. Uh, Basically, the idea is like, what if there was a like my proposed like kind of pitch for it is, what if there was a slasher for the slashers? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I can't. I don't really. It's weird because I could go more in depth with it, but again, I don't want to do that like on stream simply because like
Yeah, don't let people make people wait for it, and then when the time is right, you'll produce it.
well, I'll give a list of like the inspirations that I've had to kind of incorporate
Mm-hmm.
to help create this idea, which is what was it? Was Supernatural, like the show, um,
Mm-hmm.
Hellboy series, like the comics and the movies.
Mm-hmm.
Well, specifically the Guillermo del Toro movies.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
We don't talk about the other ones.
there's also one. I don't know if anyone here has heard of this comic or read it, but Hack and Slash.
I don't think so. Maybe. Have I? I think.
Basically, the idea was this girl who was like a final girl, and I think it was Casey Hack, or yeah, it was Casey Hack. Um, who basically goes around the world killing slashers. Um, there's a lot more. I haven't read it myself personally. I've seen videos on it,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, that was just kind of like the general thing is like why I bring this up is just because I'll be honest, like in terms of horror, slasher genre is just my favorite. Just how like diverse it kind of is in terms of slashers, the weapons, the killings, and just the kind of creativity that does go into it. I will say that it did stagnate for a bit. I won't lie.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah. Uh, but yeah, like it's just kind of like I will say I think it's honestly like the first genre of horror I ever really got into.
Mm.
Anyway, I do think we should cover some.
You do kind of give off slasher movie guy vibes sometimes, you know.
I think that's a compliment or an insult.
No, what I
I'm not sure because I'm not sure what aspect of a slasher movie he's talking about.
no, I'm just joking around. What I mean by that is that like you kind of you kind of seem like you'd enjoy like you said you enjoy like more schlocky type of like horror comedies, and those typically are like your Freddy Kruegers and shit like that are basically
Actually,
very
he was.
joke stuff like that.
I will say this: the Platinum Dunes version of Nightmare on Elm Street with
Yeah,
Jackie Earl Haley, he got fucked over with that. Like he was actually really good in that. I think.
he really was. Yeah, he
Yeah,
was.
Jackie Earl Haley was good. It's just a shame that he wasn't in a good movie.
He really was. But yeah, like you seem like you'd enjoy like Freddy Krueger, stuff like that. Basically, stuff that's like really, really silly.
Although he was
Mhm.
terrifying in the first movie.
He was, because that was played straight.
But then they realized they had a formula and they milked it for all it's worth, like we do.
Exactly. Yeah, because then then he started making jokes and stuff like that.
Right.
Horror Deadpool. Freddy Krueger is basically horror Deadpool.
Yeah, he's basically horror Deadpool. Yeah.
See, okay, it's a weird dichotomy with me. It's like I don't mind the schlocky-ness, but like the slasher characters that Platinum, like specifically with like Platinum Dunes 2009 reboot stuff.
Yeah.
It's weird because I kind of want to see them taken seriously, but I think they just kind of they didn't know what the fuck they were doing, you know?
Yeah, I can see that. Like, kind of like how Evil Dead was initially supposed to be serious.
Yeah.
The problem is people confuse serious with grounded, and those two things aren't the same thing at all.
They aren't.
Like,
Yeah, they aren't mutually. They aren't the same. Yeah.
you can be serious and still have a lot of flavor, a lot of a lot
Stylization
of
to it, yeah.
like stylization. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest problem. The biggest problem is people think
Wait, is
serious
that a
means
candelabra behind you?
yes. It's like like a dozen technically. It's not a candelabra because a candelabra is 6. That is 13 candles on the candelabra.
Uh,
He's fancy.
I collect weird things. This is not news to either one of you.
I mean, you're dressed like you look like someone. You look like you're Amish. So yeah, I can see that.
Victorian, but fuck you.
Sure.
I mean, since we're on the top, what genres of horrors do you guys like? Kind of just to close out the stream, then.
Go ahead, Dalton. You go first.
Obviously, I favor the more supernatural ones, and I like when horror movies do their homework. Like, I don't really like movies like Midsommar and Hereditary
I
because
hate Midsommar. Oh my god.
I think they go about it the wrong way, but I do respect that they do their homework for the most part because the same guy that made Hereditary and Midsommar also made The Northman, and he obviously had done his research with regards to the Norse sagas. But I think I'm a little bit like Brainstormer in that horror movies do not scare me, and they probably never will scare me. So I prefer horror movies that are more in on the joke, for lack of a better word. That are like I said, I've been binging Vincent Price movies recently, and apart from the fact that Vincent Price is just fucking awesome, I've noticed that before in like the horror genre, you had the and this is probably true for all movies to some extent, is they used to be aware enough of their like pulpiness, and they weren't ashamed of their pulpiness. They embraced it, and there was like proper use of color, proper use of aesthetics. Whereas now, horror is just we're gonna put a bunch of people in a dark room and jump scare them to death, and that's just like, guys. Not only is that not scary, there's nothing here for me to actually get attached to.
Let me see. Let's see. For me, I'm pretty. So my favorite kind of horror, I suppose, is like, as I mentioned, I do like straight, but my favorite aspects of it are body horror and both supernatural and like sci-fi. I don't really care much for like quote unquote realistic horror with that just bores me.
Mm-hmm.
Like like I prefer something a bit more I prefer something like I can like I don't care for something like Scream which is basically just a guy running around in like a mass, like a Halloween mass stabbing people. Like I don't care for that, you know?
Speaking of horror, Deadpool.
Exactly.
Mm.
But I do like something like The Thing, which is like basically like like just body horror and grotesque transformations and stuff like that.
Mm.
Like I really enjoy like sort of
Have you seen the remake of The Fly? The David Cronenberg's The Fly?
Oh, where the villain gets turned into like a mutant fly thing, and he's like inside the little observation pit. Like that was fucking. Oh my god, I love that.
Yeah, I was gonna say because if you like body horror, then I'm gonna have to introduce you to Mr. David Cronenberg.
Yeah,
I
it's why I enjoy a lot of Japanese horror because it's a lot of it is like body horror.
Corrupt's just like start sprouting tentacles and then I'll be impressed.
Exactly. Like if
yeah.
like go ahead.
Sorry, I was just gonna say like yeah, that's uh that and the Saw movies. I was never really into. Um, just I don't know. It's just like it was weird to me, and like I can't really explain it. Like just unsettled me in a not the right way, I suppose.
I like the Saw movies, but I like them more for their like philosophical content than I do the like I don't the torture porn isn't even it isn't even shocking to me. It's just boring. Like the thing I find most interesting about the Saw traps is like the thought process and the like philosophy that goes into them. Like I really like John Kramer, the Jigsaw Killer, as a character. He's really interesting. In the same way that I find Dr. Lecter from the Hannibal Lecter trilogy very interesting. I,
Yeah.
I I don't really find him scary. I just find him fascinating and honestly Silence of the Lambs was the very first horror movie that I ever watched, and funnily enough, my mom recommended it to me, and she recommended it to me on the grounds that I would really relate to Dr. Lecter.
Well,
Um, and it's funny to me because I don't think she realized just how strongly I relate to Dr. Lecter. Is like, and, and the thing with Lecter that it annoys me how people react to him because they react to him as though he's this unstoppable, unthinking force. But the thing that I find interesting about Dr. Lecter is that he isn't that. He can be like that you give him no other option, but he prefers to be a highly intellectual, highly cultured gentleman. And honestly, if you're not rude, if you're not and if you don't get in his way, he has no reason whatsoever to take issue with you. He prefers to make the world a better place by ridding it of the rude and
I
the
mean,
uncultured.
that's like saying that's like saying like well like okay, I'm gonna throw this at you though. Hitler just wanted to get rid of evil people in the form of the Jews. Like I mean,
Okay,
you can make like
okay,
arguments
but
like that, sure, but you can say, "Oh, I don't like rude people, so I'm going to eat them." But like that's kind of a flimsy rationale for wanting to kill.
okay,
For
well,
like that's kind of a
I'm
flimsy
going to
rationale.
toss it right back at you and point out that that's a bit of a false equivalency because
Not
there
really. I
are
mean, go
there
ahead.
are concrete logical errors in Hitler's logic that we can point at.
I mean,
Dr. Dr. Lecter's standards appear to be fairly airtight as far as like their intellectual consistency.
that's flimsy rationale. Like, oh my god, someone like stepped on my shoes. I guess I should totally like eat that guy. Like that's
Yeah,
kind of
that's
it's a
also not
ridiculous
how
overreaction though.
that's not how he actually employs the standard though, to be fair.
I mean,
I,
but it's still a ridiculous standard. Like here's my thing: you can't have a functional society where people just eat each other because they violate your personal standard when it comes to being rude.
I mean, no, but not everyone is Dr. Lecter.
Correct. Do you know
That's
who you're talking to? Like, it's Dalton. What do you expect?
it.
I,
Like that. That's Dalton's a reason. But Dalton can reason and think.
yeah, huh?
Like somewhat. Like I could accept that if. I can accept that if you weren't capable of reasoning and thinking through like what you're actually saying. Like if you were just like some blue-haired ninny that shrieked about patriarchy and shit, I wouldn't care, but like you can actually think and process and reason.
Well,
Yeah, but the thing you're missing is it's not it's not some kind of superficial surface level version of rudeness.
But
It's
like
it's not as simple as, oh, you failed to wipe your mouth and therefore now you die. It in most cases with Lecter, it has to be a sustained pattern of essentially, for lack of a better word, subhuman behavior.
Dragon Turtle, we don't have duels anymore for that reason. Like we don't have duels for that reason though. You don't have you don't have a functional society where people just sort of like off each other in the street because like their standard of rudeness, their standard of like impoliteness has been met. Like yeah, you can say that like Dr. Lecter's standards are like different, but everyone has a standard for being rude.
Yeah, but the difference with someone like Dr. Lecter, and this is why I respect him as a character, is because his standards are almost like, for lack of a better word, Socratic in nature. Like he can give you an entire like dissertation of, like he is almost the type that would like hand you a 20-page dissertation of like, this is why you must die and this is how your existence is making the world a worse place. It's almost to the point of like, but unless of course you are trying to get in his way and trying to inconvenience him, in which case all bets are off. But at that point, I would almost make a self defense argument. But yeah, the thing that I love about Dr. Lecter is it's not as though he doesn't think things through. Barring, when he's incarcerated, or barring when someone is in the process of trying to capture him, he always goes through a very lengthy process of, why this particular person or why that particular person must be gone. And then of course there's the only issue I have with Dr. Lecter, and this is the issue I have against cannibalism in general. It's the murder that's wrong. It's not even the cannibalism that's wrong. Like, cannibalism in absence of murder is not wrong, in my opinion. As
I mean,
in, people donate themselves to science all the fucking time. If they donated themselves to the culinary arts instead, for example, I wouldn't see any problem with a human eating another human as long as there wasn't murder involved in them, you know.
I mean, I have no it like cannibalism. I cannibalism's like inherent moral value is subjective. Obviously, that's
Uh,
basically my opinion of it. It's like it's kind of subjective. You either think it's wrong or you don't. Although a lot of people would say like eating other people is wrong, but like the murder part is more of the issue I have with it. Basically,
And even then, and this is the other cool thing about Dr. Lecter that I really respect is, in general, when he kills you, he always tries to put you into shock first, so there will be no pain, which shows at the very least that there's some kind of logical consideration going on here beyond just I need to kill something.
right.
Anyway,
Okay,
this conversation went so far afield from where it started, though.
Right, sorry. I just like for time purposes, we are gonna have to cut this here. Sorry about that. Although
Mhm.
I will end on this. Dragon Turtle says people eat each other all the time. Just look at Tinder. But just
Yeah, honestly, if it's a choice between the kind of eating that goes on Tinder and the kind of eating that would be at the behest of someone like Dr. Lecter, commence the Escoffier fanboyism.
I don't get that, to be honest. That's a joke.
Dr. Lecter's gastronomic palate is very similar to George Auguste Escoffier, who was a famous French chef. That was the joke.
I'm talking about Dragon Turtles joke.
He's talking about.
I don't want to know. I feel like it's weird and gross, and Corrupt would probably love saying it.
He's talking about fellatio, is what he's talking about there. That and cunnilingus.
Cunnilingus, like, just imagine, like, the
I
cunnilingus.
nope. I'm too pure and innocent for this.
I am surprised that Brainstormer doesn't know about fellatio, but that's the topic for another day. Anyway,
You don't know about fellatio, really?
No, I know what fellatio is. I just didn't get the joke.
How old are you?
I'm gonna be 23 next month.
Jesus, you're like a baby.
oh dear God. Anyway, outro for the love of God before this deteriorates.
Right. So with that, folks, I want to say goodbye, adios, aloha, auf Wiedersehen, sayonara, peace, cheers.
Oh wait, hold on. Chrononaut says you know why Dr. Lecter kills kindly, right? Can we at least say what his says? Because I'm curious.
Sure.
Oh God. Why, Chrono?
Alright. If it is violent, the meat releases a chemical. Oh, that's interesting.
I mean,
Okay.
that's a topic for another day. Anyway, fuck off.